Chapter 207. Genius 1. Second, remember love, divided by, go divided by little. Say net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Sirma walked to Yi Yin quickly, taking out handcuffs and putting them on King Kong's hands. Love, go little say, Ku, you can't escape even if you have wings. You'd better cooperate with us. King Kong sneered and moved aside. He didn't intend to talk at all. At this time, a police car drove in quickly, followed by 2 more cars. Those fully armed police officers ran out of the police car with guns in both hands. Sirma, little brats, do you always come out only after you're done? How can you be a policeman? Officer Ma said unhappily. But you're also a policeman. But the scolded police officers didn't dare to say anything. They just caught King Kong, who had been subdued silently. Yi Yin had walked to the side. He came to the place where Jessica's car had overturned. But here, he couldn't see Jessica. Yi Yin raised his head and looked at the underground parking lot blankly. He saw the young man who was sent out as a spy. He grabbed his arm subconsciously, asking nervously, "Where's the lady just now?" "I don't know. I didn't see her." The young police officer answered blankly. Yi Yin let go of him and took 2 steps back. His gaze once again scanned the surroundings. He put his palm on his lips. Jessica, Jessica, Jessica. He walked out of the parking lot quickly along the gate, looking for her while shouting. Luochio took off the mask on his face. At the corner of the parking lot, a group of police officers were dealing with the scene. Miss Maid was beside him. As for the person who was supposed to be a spy in this operation, he was sitting on the ground. Yuya's finger had been poking the forehead of the main character for some time. Finally, Miss Maid withdrew her finger. She looked at Luochio and said softly, "Master, when he wakes up, this gentleman will feel like he has experienced everything just now." Luochio nodded. He looked at Yi Yin, who was leaning on the minivan not far away. After a while, he said, "Let's go, it's okay now." Jessica came to a small alley not far from the building. It took almost all of her strength to travel this distance, but she still managed to bring the goods out. After taking several deep breaths, Jessica took out her phone. Very soon, the call was connected, but there was no response. Jessica said slowly, "Mr. Sun, since you received my call, you should know that King Kong has failed." Mr. Sun said calmly, "Dear Jessica, judging from your voice, you don't seem to be in a good condition." Jessica said, "I'm fine, at least that batch of goods is still in my hands. There are no more of your men here. You should be able to continue the deal between you and me, right?" Mr. Sun suddenly said, No, Jessica, I don't even care about the goods now. I care about you. Jessica, you're indeed the child that we've nurtured and one of the best believers. Since King Kong has failed in your hands, it's enough to prove your excellence. Jessica, you're just confused for a moment, aren't you? Our arms will always be open for you. Cut the crap. I still have the same request. You must send my mother to the headquarters of the criminal police before sunrise. Otherwise, I'll pour all the goods into the sewer. Oh, child, you've really let us down. The Mr. Sun on the other end of the phone sighed. It's time for you to return to our embrace and listen to our beliefs again. A strange sound came from the other side of the phone. Jessica held her head abruptly. A horrible ear-piercing sound was ringing crazily in her mind. She fell to the ground painfully. The voice was still ringing. "Jessica, tell me, who are you?" I'm Jessica. I'm the most loyal believer of Michael Club." No. I'm Jessica, no. Jessica, how long has it been since you listened to the gospel of our Lord? Child, you've been out for too long. The temptations in this world have blinded your heart. Child, remember who you are. I'm... Jessica stopped, looking a loss. She picked up the phone slowly. Although there seemed to be a faint struggle in her eyes, her consciousness was slowly being replaced by something. Jessica tried hard to control her body, but the words that came out from her mouth were not what she wanted to say. I'm the child of our Lord. I'm a believer of our Lord. Who could save me? Yes, you're our child. Everything about you, including your thoughts, should exist for our great Lord. Yes, now, child, tell me your location. I'll send someone to collect the goods, and of course you too. Don't worry, you'll meet your mother in heaven very soon. Meet? What, Mr. Sun didn't know was that the phone in Jessica's hand was taken away by someone. Feeling that Jessica's answer was not perfect, Mr. Sun continued, "Jessica, good child, tell me your location now." "Well, you're that Mr. Sun?" "Oh, one of the Mr. Sun?" It wasn't Jessica's voice, but another voice that Mr. Sun had never heard before. He frowned but didn't panic. Instead, he asked calmly, "Who are you? Who are you?" This question seemed to be the most frequently asked by the club's new boss in the past 2 months. The club boss who appeared in the box looked at Jessica, who was sitting on the ground. Noticing the trace of struggle hidden in her eyes, he answered the person on the other end of the phone in a more peaceful tone. "Me? I'm just a businessman. For now, Miss Jessica is my guest." "Oh, really?" Mr. Sun kept silent for a while, saying calmly, "That's interesting. We're also businessmen. Since we're all businessmen, I think we can have a good talk." Luochio chuckled. "Do you need anything?" Mr. Sun said calmly, "It's very simple. No matter how much Jessica gives you, we'll give you double or even more. As long as you return Jessica and the things in her hands to us. That's all. You seem to have a strong purchasing power." Luochio narrowed his eyes. Mr. Sun said calmly, "Cut the crap. I don't know how much you know from Jessica, but if you know, you'll regret negotiating with me here. But it's okay. I like negotiating with people with guts. 1 billion. 1 billion? Euros." Mr. Sun said calmly. Luochio said calmly, "That's a lot. However, this customer, it's a pity that we don't accept money." "What?" "Italy, Turin. Alpino Street, number 38. Well, Unit 4, study room." Boss Luo narrowed his eyes. "Customer, is the bottle of Margot in front of you tasty?" Who are you?" The voice was full of shock, fear, and panic. In an apartment at the specific address, the wine glass in the man's hand fell to the ground. He stood up abruptly, looking around the study room, which was empty except for him. Chapter 208. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, Go/Small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. But obviously, this Mr. Sun was also a man who had experienced storms. He quickly recovered from the state of shock. But at the same time, he quickly walked to the door and turned off the light in the study room, making it dark. In this way, even if someone was monitoring him outside the room, they wouldn't be able to see his current situation. He didn't believe that the man could see him from a country tens of thousands of kilometers away. There must be someone hiding nearby. Quickly organizing his thoughts, Mr. Sun did something on a notebook on the desk while calmly saying, "You are very powerful to be able to find me. Can you tell me where you came from? If you plan to do business with us, you will naturally know us." Mr. Sun raised his eyebrows and said slowly, "You said you don't charge any money, right? Then, if you feel that money doesn't hold value, how about gold and other hard currencies?" "We don't accept any form of currency," Luochio said in a low voice, "but don't worry, sir. The reason why I contacted you is just to get to know you and take a look at the so-called Michael Club. But I'm a little disappointed. Sir, you don't seem to be the core figure of the club. It seems that in the codename of Mr. Sun, you on the other end of the phone probably don't have a number. You don't even have a number. You are purely an external contact officer." The man took a deep breath. "Condition, you can state your condition. There's no need to say too much since you call yourselves businessmen. We will naturally do business." Luochio put the phone to his lips, "But for you, it's not the time yet. Besides, I am a curious person. Then, let me see to what extent your so-called order of unifying evil can achieve." The voice was completely cut off here. The man narrowed his eyes and looked at the interface on the phone screen. At this time, he received another call. It was an order issued by the computer when he sat down, and now there was a reply. "Sir, Demon Vision has observed around you and didn't find any suspicious people. In addition, we can't trace the source of the phone signal. I'm afraid the other party has a very clever hacker helper." "You can't find anyone suspicious?" The man couldn't help but be furious. "Then tell me, how did he see the name of the bottle of red wine I'm drinking? Perhaps the other party is someone who has the same ability as Mr. Demon Vision. Rice bucket. I'm sorry, sir. Do you have any other orders? Get ready immediately. I want to leave this place." The man stood up decisively and said, "This place has been exposed. After I leave, come and destroy the things here. No, prepare for me first. I want to go out to sea. Right away." Yes, the man closed the notebook and pressed his hands on it, but he felt a kind of gaze that seemed to be poured on him all the time, making all the pores on his body feel like a cold air was being poured into his body. Yes, the man felt an unprecedented fear. The unknown was too frightening. "It's you." The moment he hung up the phone, Jessica opened her mouth. She looked at the boss of the club with vigilance and fear. She basically heard the latter part of the conversation between him and Mr. Sun. She woke up halfway through the conversation. Luaccio looked at Jessica's eyes and returned the phone to her. "It seems that Michael Club's hypnosis on you isn't strong enough. That man seemed to want to wake up the part of you that was brainwashed by hypnosis, but apparently he failed." Jessica thought quickly. She gritted her teeth and stood up with the help of the wall. "During these years when I was sent out, I didn't go back on time several times because of the mission. After a long time, I started to resist my other self more and more." She was afraid that it was because of something else. Luaccio didn't expose her. Even when she was in great pain due to the hypnosis, she obviously grasped her collar tightly for a short period of time. She grasped the pendant of the necklace inside her collar. Jessica suddenly looked at the weird boss and gritted her teeth. "It seems that you know more about Michael Club than I do." "Yes, I know about this place recently." The new boss of the club didn't intend to beat around the bush. "Then I paid some price and finally got some information." Jessica suddenly asked, "Since you know what Michael Club has done and you have this kind of strange power, why do you still allow this organization to exist?" Luaccio said indifferently, "Are you testing our position?" Jessica took a deep breath. "Since you have the mysterious power, you can totally make the world more beautiful, right?" Luaccio shook his head. "Our aim is never to give for free. Besides, why do we have to make Michael Club disappear? Is it simply because of its existence that this world is filled with more darkness, causing many people to sink into pain?" Jessica gritted her teeth, "At least without it." Before she finished her words, Luaccio interrupted her. "Since ancient times, has the war ever stopped? If one Michael Club disappears, can you guarantee that there won't be another one? You can't guarantee this point. As for us, there's no need to guarantee." Jessica sneered. "In the final analysis, it's just because the profit isn't enough. If there's enough profit, you'll naturally take action, right? You're really a businessman for nothing but profit." Luaccio said indifferently, "There's no need to infuriate us. And, just like what you said, we're indeed businessmen for nothing but profit. If you can afford the transaction fee, you can ask us to make this club disappear." Jessica smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid that even if I use everything I have, it won't be enough to eradicate 1% of it." Luaccio didn't say anything, just stood there quietly. In the dim alley, he seemed to be unusually quiet, as if he was a part of the darkness. Jessica was also silent. After a long while, Jessica said slowly, "I want to make a deal." "Please say." Jessica said in a low voice. "Michael Club is very strict. They don't tolerate betrayal, and they're very cruel. I need to know if my mother is safe now." Jessica had to consider her next action. She even worried that the people in the club wouldn't be threatened by her. After all these years, she gradually woke up and felt that they were a group of lunatics. She couldn't understand the thinking mode of those lunatics at all. At the cost of 5 years of her life, Jessica got the answer from the club boss. "I'm sorry, customer, your mother died 25 years ago." Luaccio's answer almost made Jessica collapse. "Impossible." Jessica almost roared. "Impossible. A few months ago, I even had a video call with my mother. She's still alive." Luaccio sighed. "In fact, you're an orphan. Your mother passed away when you were very young. You wandered on the street and were brought back by the club. The club has been hypnotizing you since you were young, and the mother you think of is just an actress." "You're lying." Luocio came to the front of Jessica, stretching out his hand and touching her forehead lightly. Then he said, "Actually, I still have the memory of my childhood, but it has been hidden in the depth of my mind. In this case, you should be able to believe me." The memory gradually spread out in Jessica's mind. When she was 20 years old, "Mother, don't worry. I'll definitely become an excellent believer. After my birthday, I'll be sent out to fight for our Lord's cause. I'll definitely give you the chance to transcend. Child, don't work too hard. Take care of your body and do what you can." "Got it, Mother." When she was 18 years old, "Sorry, Mother, I didn't reach the target in today's training. Child, don't work too hard. Take care of your body and do what you can. You have to believe that our Lord will see your efforts in his eyes." "Mother, can I eat your apple pie tomorrow? If you work hard tomorrow, I'll make it for you. You have to work hard." "Okay, Mother." When she was 13 years old, "Mother, what's the place on the other side of the sea?" I don't know. I just saw the place on the other side of the sea from videos and videos." "Are there a lot of people there?" "Of course. The other side of the sea is also a very dangerous place. You have to remember that we can only find happiness here." "Oh." When she was 10 years old, "Mother, where are you? I'm so scared." "Child, I'm here. Can you hear my voice? Good boy. Pick up the dagger in your hand. Do you see the hound? Come, believe in yourself and kill it. It's the incarnation of the devil. As the Lord's believers, we have the obligation to kill it. Listen, in order to protect the paradise we live in, sometimes we have to use force. It's a last resort. I've made the best apple pie for you. Good boy." But she was still scared. "Mother, I don't want to kill this hound." 6 years old. Where's this place? Is it here? This is paradise. It's a place without sorrow and hatred." Who are you?" "Child, have you forgotten? I'm your mother." "Mother, good boy." 5 years old. "Go away, stinky brat. Don't stay in front of my dad's shop." I'm hungry. Do you want to eat the bread here? If you pretend to be a puppy and crawl around here, I'll give it to you." "Woof, woof. Woof, woof, eat. Puppy." 3 years old. "Mother, I want to listen to the story of Cinderella." "Okay, but you have to sleep after listening to it." "Okay." Once upon a time, there was a family of hunters. Jessica leaned against the wall. Her body slid down slowly and sat on the cold floor. Chapter 209. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, Go/Little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. The number of vehicles on the street decreased, and the voices of the people gradually dispersed. 12 o'clock midnight. 2 o'clock a.m.m. 3:30 a.m.m. Jessica finally raised her head slowly. She touched the corner of her eyes subconsciously, but found that there were no tears. Jessica was still silent. She looked at this person who was the only one who accompanied her in this dark alley, sizing him up carefully, and then said slowly, "Thank you. Have you thought about what you need?" Jessica nodded. "First of all, the 2 letters are invalid, but I'll still use the transaction fee that we agreed on before. Please go ahead." Jessica took a deep breath. "I need the power to fight against Michael Club. Are you going to take revenge on Michael Club by yourself?" Jessica said indifferently, "Do you need to know the purpose of your customers when you sell things to them?" Luaccio shook his head. "No, it's just my personal curiosity." But Jessica said decisively, "Then don't talk about it anymore. I need the power to take revenge." "As you wish, dear customer." The club's boss bowed slightly. He snapped his fingers in the air, and an ancient parchment scroll slowly fell from the sky. It slowly opened in front of Jessica. The surroundings seemed to have entered a different space, which was dark and empty. Jessica took a deep breath. At this moment, she was willing to be an avenger. The moment she pressed her palm on the sheepskin scroll, the pain caused by the fracture of her arm disappeared rapidly. Her leg that was stuck because of the car accident had recovered. A power that was far beyond the past seemed to be gushing out from her body continuously. Suddenly, a slight crackling sound came from Jessica's body. It was a strand of blue-purple, irregular light that wound around her body. Jessica stretched out her palm subconsciously. She looked at the blue-purple arc light that was rolling between her fingers. It was electric current. "You've strengthened your body a little." Luaccio looked at Jessica's astonishment after gaining the power, saying calmly, "As for the electric power, it'll be stronger than your body because it'll keep growing. Of course, with its growth, it'll also reduce your life." Jessica looked at him silently. The stronger it is, the faster I'll die, and the faster you'll get the transaction fee. Right? You're really a profit-seeking businessman. But she shook her head at once. It's nothing. Anyway, I've never thought of you as a kind person. It's enough for me to have these. While saying this, Jessica walked past Luo Chio and dashed into the depth of the alley without saying anything. Luo Chio looked at the goods of Michael Club with astonishment. Jessica seemed to leave them here on purpose, and she didn't intend to take them away. Luo Chio couldn't help but ponder as he lifted the big bag. In the residence behind the small, traditional Chinese medicine pharmacy, the old Chinese medicine doctor who had been busy for a whole day was lying on the table, sleeping soundly. Because of Officer Ma's order, the old Chinese medicine doctor could only try his best to look after the seriously injured guy who was sent here not long ago. The old Chinese medicine doctor didn't know that the patient had woken up. Yes, Yuhua had woken up not long ago. But he didn't move. On the one hand, the tendons and bones of his hands and feet were cut off, completely losing the ability to move. On the other hand, it was the side effect of the forbidden medicine. It wasn't the first time he used this forbidden medicine. Ever since the Michael Club generously sold some trial products, and when he saw his martial uncle become extremely powerful after using this forbidden drug, he knew the side effects of this drug. For a long period of time, its side effect would make people extremely weak. Only by using it continuously could one maintain his spirit. But he also knew from his uncle that using it continuously was equal to squeezing one's life. The power beyond the limit of one's physical body had to be paid with one's life. However, even with this as the price, he still couldn't fulfill his original expectation and ended up like this. As a martial artist, he knew clearly how serious the consequences of his injuries were. Even if he immediately reconnected his tendons and bones after being cut off, he was afraid that he couldn't recover to his original state, not to mention that such a long time had passed. Disabled. These were the words that lingered in his mind like a nightmare ever since he woke up. Looking back at the past, Yuhua's heart was filled with extreme hatred. He wasn't afraid of death, but he didn't want to become such a coward. As a martial artist, there was nothing more terrible than not being able to practice martial arts. I'm already a disabled person, Yuhua lay on his sickbed. The memories of the past few years kept surging in his heart. His heart was screaming. It was as if he was trapped in a pitch-black cage, and this cage was constantly shrinking, oppressing his body. When the despair reached the limit, he seemed to be suffocating. A hot stream streamed down from the corner of his eyes. Tears. This made Yu Hua more agitated. This kind of cowardice even made him feel that his heart was being stabbed by a sharp bayonet. Fury, hatred, rancor, humiliation, all of these things completely exploded in his heart. Carly, I hate it so much. He finally roared out, like a ferocious ghost from hell, hysterically. Ah, I hate it so much. Ah. He crazily struggled his body, but he couldn't move his hands and feet, so he could only turn over from his sickbed. He fell on the ground, his cheeks sticking to the cold floor, sobbing like a helpless child. I hate it so much. Suddenly, he saw a pair of legs. Someone was standing in front of him without him noticing. Yuhua raised his head with difficulty. He looked at this person, this man wearing a weird clown mask. This man squatted down at this moment, slowly opening his mouth in front of him. Customer, what do you want? What do I want? Yes, no matter what it is. As long as you can pay the price, we can fulfill it for you. That voice became softer, like the spring equinox. No matter what it is. Power. I want power. I want power. Can you get it to me? Yuhua suddenly roared. The most powerful power, the power to break all the fate. Can you get it to me? He seemed to be crazy. Can you give it to me? Ha ha. Customer. What do you want to pay with? What? Yuhua laughed crazily. As long as I can stand up again, as long as I can have the power to surpass myself. No matter what it is, I can give it to you. My wealth, my life, even my soul. Are you sure? Cut the crap. Give it to me. As you wish, dear customer. Wait, what are you going to do? At this moment, Yuhua looked at the strange man in front of him in horror. watching him dissolve the blue powder in the water. This blue powder, he was so familiar with it. Of course it's for you. The syringe filled with blue solution pierced into his arm. This dose is enough to give you an incomparably powerful power. No, no, I don't want it. Stop. I don't want it. Sorry, customer. The contract has been signed. You have to obey it. Don't Power, endless power started to surge out of Yu Hua's body crazily, but his heart was beating crazily, as if it would explode at any time. One dose after another was injected into the blood vessels of Yu Hua's arms slowly and steadily. Along with the surging of his blood, the power of the blue powder was crazily flowing into every part of his body. They even rushed up to his head and invaded it. Finally, Yu Hua knelt down on the ground. His muscles were crazily expanding. His face was bulging with dense and strong blood vessels. So was his whole body. The densely packed and swollen blood vessels on his body turned into messy, spiderweb-like patterns after being rolled around. Yu Hua put his hands on the ground. His whole body was crazily trembling. His fingers were crazily clenching, easily crushing the hard ground. However, the endless power in his body was still surging, as if it had no limit. He had to vent the pain in his body in this way. His fists fiercely struck the floor. Each punch was able to shatter the hard concrete floor. He was like a pile driver in the middle of work. Power. Ha ha. I have power. Ha ha ha. Yu Hua stood up slowly while laughing crazily. At this moment, he seemed to feel that he was almost invincible and could even destroy everything. This feeling is so wonderful. Yu Hua looked at his hands and laughed crazily again. Then he sneered. He took a step forward. However, after only one step, he knelt down on the ground instantly. Blood, a large amount of blood, a large amount of black blood, was crazily bursting out from each of his blood vessels. He screamed crazily. His muscles and bones seemed to be being crushed bit by mechanical pressure. Yu Hua's eyeballs directly rolled up, showing the whites of his eyes which were filled with blood to the limit. The man who stood in front of him from the beginning to the end and brought him the so-called power, at this moment, slowly took off the mask on his face. Yu Hua moved his lips, seeming to want to say something. But Yu Hua didn't say anything in the end. He had lowered his head, and his body fell on the ground like a collapsed statue, pressing into the black blood pool. At this moment, the boss of the club bent down elegantly, saying softly, "Customer, are you satisfied? Then, please pay the transaction fee." Chapter 210. A genius will remember love in 1 second/small. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. Ma Hao and Yi Yin looked extremely serious. Since last night, they hadn't closed their eyes for more than 5 minutes, even though King Kong had been locked up. But Yu Hua was dead. The people who rushed to the old Chinese medicine doctor's place couldn't help sweating when they saw the scene. The state of Yu Hua's death was too horrifying. His whole body was lying in a pool of sticky, almost black blood. Most of his muscles were torn open, and there was no part of him that was intact. The real bloody mess was probably like this, and the cracks on the floor. Turning over Yu Hua's body, Yin looked at everything here silently. He frowned. These damages should be caused by Yu Hua. Sima also frowned. What kind of torture could make a person become like this? Ma Hao looked at the old Chinese medicine doctor with a pale face. You really didn't see anything? You can't even hear a thing when you're in this state? The old Chinese medicine doctor shook his head, his face full of fear. Sir Ma, how can I lie to you? Since you started working for me, I've been treating you for decades. Don't you know what kind of person I am? I saw the situation as soon as I woke up, so I immediately contacted you. Ma Hao took a deep breath. The air was filled with the smell of blood. It was like the smell of dead fish in the sewers. It was fishy and stinky. Could it be someone from Michael Club? He had to look at his old partner Yi Yin, asking the first thought in his mind. Yi Yin shook his head, sighing. No matter what, Yu Hua is dead. Besides, he's just a buyer, so he shouldn't know much about Michael Club. The key is to go to Shao Sei. Ma Hao nodded. I'll send people to watch this guy 24 hours a day. He can't even commit suicide. I don't believe that the people from the Michael Club have the guts to break into the police station. With this, Sir Ma patted Yi Yan's shoulder. Bro, don't worry, I'll send more people. As long as that lady is still here, I'll definitely help you find her. And that batch of goods. Yi Yan patted Ma Hao's hand on his shoulder, forcing a smile. He heaved a long sigh, looking at the sky outside the window. It's dawn. Shall I send you back to the Peace Hotel? Ma Hao thought for a while. Yi Yan shook his head. It's okay. I want to be alone. Let me know if there's any news from King Kong. You won't go missing again, will you? Ma Hao asked seriously. It's okay. You can tell your tigress that you're safe. Yi Yan smiled. He shook his black windbreaker and walked out of the door. After washing his face, Luochio looked at himself in the mirror. The feeling in the Chinese medicine pharmacy had faded away from his heart. Yu Hua broke his usual calmness. After he finished the transaction, it was like an oil lamp that burned out. He returned to his room quickly, sitting in front of the desk. There were 2 letters here, which were written by Jessica. Of course, according to her request, the contents of these 2 letters were invalid. But it didn't mean that he couldn't open them. Moreover, the appointed time had passed, 7:01 a.m. Luochio tore open the first letter. There's an island in the Pacific Ocean. It's the heaven of Michael Club. There are many people living there, including children, adults, believers. So, please liberate those people on this island. If my soul is not enough, I can at least rescue my mother and free her from the beliefs of the Michael Club, so that she can start a new life and forget my existence. There wasn't much content, but this was what Jessica wanted from the club after considering that her plan had failed. Luochio took this letter and put it on the top of the trash can. Since Jessica knew that her mother was just a scam, this letter had no value to exist anymore. It burned in the air and the ashes scattered in the small trash can. Luochio closed his eyes. He put his palm on the second letter, but didn't open it immediately. This lock couldn't stop Yi Yan. The moment he opened the door, he suddenly remembered the scene where Jessica gave him her gun not long ago. He heaved a long sigh, running his fingers across the furniture in this unit. He sat on the sofa and closed his eyes. It seemed that Jessica was sitting beside him. It seemed that she was eavesdropping on the sound of the tapping device installed in Luochio's house downstairs. Yi Yan covered his ears with his hands, tilting his head slightly. He thought that Jessica should be like this too. All of a sudden, Yi Yan pinched his finger and put on his lips. He imagined that he was holding a recording pen. He imagined what Jessica would say if she was the one who recorded it. I came to Yi Yan's hometown. Yi Yan put down his hand, showing a smile that was neither happy nor sad. Even he himself didn't know. It was probably a smile. He looked around the room casually. Suddenly, he saw a black suitcase under the tea table of the sofa. Yi Yan took out the suitcase subconsciously. He touched the leather of the suitcase. It was a familiar suitcase. Yi Yan opened it. A saxophone, a letter, and a USB flash drive. It was a 2-page envelope. To Yi Yan, I know that you will come here again, and it will most likely be soon. I know that you must be curious about who I am. I've always been a member of Michael's Club. Since I was a child, I grew up under the organization's training. Yes, I've always believed that the Michael Club is the object of my faith for the rest of my life. Until I met you. I even remember that 3 years ago, when I first saw you in the crowd at the airport, I still remember that you were the first person I saw. Your face was full of beard, like a drunkard who hadn't woken up yet, and the melancholy in your eyes. It's been 3 years. Can't you smile happily? I know that there's always someone in your heart, and I, maybe in this life, can't become that person. But in these 3 years, in the 25 years of my life, there's you. I'm afraid I'm the kind of person you hate the most, because you can't imagine, during the time I lurked in the criminal police organization, how many things I did that went against your values, and how many innocent people I let fall into the whirlpool of misfortune. You can't imagine before this how many things I did for the so-called belief, which now seems inconceivable. I'm a demon, and now, this demon will become an avenger. The information in this USB flash drive is what I know, the information of the spies arranged by the organization in the headquarters, the evidence of their crimes, and the information of how you were framed. This is enough for you to prove your innocence. and allow you to obtain a significant contribution. Do you still remember? 3 years ago, you gave me a share of the credit. I think the words you said at that time are also applicable now. It's just that the person speaking is me. Ian, please don't look for me. Finally, can you play the saxophone for me? Ian closed his eyes and slowly sighed. Jessica, Luaccio tore the second letter. If I fail and die, if Michael Clubb also let my mother be punished and die in anger, please let Ian live happily in this life. And forget me. Luaccio didn't burn it. He just folded the letter carefully and slowly put it into the envelope again. When the familiar sound of the saxophone faintly came from upstairs, Luaccio locked the letter in his hand in the drawer. He closed his eyes. He put his hands in front of his body, imagining that he was also holding the saxophone. His fingers, following the sound and rhythm, bounced up and down. That was the fingering method of this song. Upstairs, Ian picked up the saxophone left by Jessica, standing in the quiet living hall. The glimmer of the early morning made this place as lazy and dark as a stage. He played slowly. She stood on the roof of the building, looking at the rising sun. She covered her left ear with one hand, feeling the breeze and listening to the sound from the small earphone. The breeze lifted her hair and blew away her thoughts at the same time. A drop of tear fell down. Chapter 2:11. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, Go/Small. Shoa Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. After landing on an island on the sea level, the man didn't have time to talk to the pilot on the plane and hurriedly walked down. A team of 5 people holding the same guns and wearing a pure white windbreaker had been waiting here for some time. Minister, you're back. The leader of the team nodded at this time. The man also nodded. He casually glanced at the other side of the island. That was the living place and the place where the believers gathered. And this side was where the base of the club was located. Mr. Sun was just a code name. In the club, everyone who was in charge of an area outside could use the code name Mr. Sun. But when he returned to the club base, the man recovered his original identity. The head of one of the 4 branches in Western Europe, code name Scorpio. Named after the 12 zodiac constellations, each branch head had a corresponding code name. Scorpio looked at the armed man in front of him. Go in first. I want to talk to the leaders. The armed man said at this time, Minister Scorpio, in fact, half an hour before you came back, the leaders of Hangman, Temperance, Pope, Priestess, Tower, and Wheel of Fortune were already waiting for you. Scorpio was taken aback. Among the 21 guild leaders, there were already 6 of them waiting for him in advance. He subconsciously thought about the seriousness of the matter. I see. From the secret entrance made of mountain rocks, Scorpio quickly walked all the way to the elevator and arrived at a certain deep underground area. This base had been built for a long time. Now under the island, it had expanded to a large scale. The elevator stopped, and Scorpio walked through a series of gates. Finally, he arrived at a room alone. There was only a bridge about 4 meters long leading to the front. Scorpio took a deep breath and walked to the end of the bridge. Suddenly, there was light all around. At this moment, the appearance of the entire room could be clearly seen. It was like a sphere with a small part cut off and standing upright. The walls around the sphere were divided into 21 areas of the same size. They were all screens. At this time, only 6 of the screens were lit up. The rest were all black. Hangman, Temperance, Pope, Priestess, Tower, Wheel of Fortune. Scorpio looked at the images on the 6 screens, one by one. However, he was unable to see the faces of these leaders. The reason for that was because only the imprints of the 6 guild heads were displayed on the screens. There was a corresponding mark in the tarot card. Guild heads. May I know what matter has caused the 6 of you to look for me together? Scorpio asked in a clear voice. Hangman's screen suddenly flickered and a voice rang out. It sounded like the sound of metal clashing. The specially processed voice sounded unusually heavy at this moment. Just an hour ago, a total of 5 operatives arranged by the club in the criminal police headquarters have been arrested. Scorpio was shocked. What? So fast? Hangman. Someone exposed their information. We've always known that the Interpol knows of our existence, and they've been working hard to find us. This time, our people's information has been exposed. Naturally, they will be controlled immediately. Scorpio frowned and said in a low voice, "It's Jessica. She must have exposed her information. Damn it, doesn't she care about her mother's safety? Hangman. She hasn't come back several times since she was sent out. Has she recovered some of her memories?" Scorpio shook his head. "No, it's impossible to break my hypnosis," but he suddenly fell into silence. Scorpio couldn't help but recall that weird phone call. That weird guy who had talked to him and easily revealed his hiding place. Was it possible for that guy to break his hypnosis? In fact, he had been waiting for Jessica to contact him on the way here, because he knew that as long as Jessica's mother was still in heaven, Jessica wouldn't act rashly. "Scorpio, why are you silent?" This time, the one who spoke was the priestess on the screen. Scorpio had to adjust his standing posture, facing the priestess. He took a deep breath and said, "Before coming here, I encountered a very weird thing." He didn't hold back what he had said to the strange man over the phone. Last time, Demon Gaze, who was assigned by the Temperance's president, had already observed my surroundings, but he didn't discover anything. But that guy seemed to be able to see my every move. The ball-shaped room suddenly fell into silence. At this moment, one of the many screens under the remaining black screen suddenly lit up. A voice came from there. "Scorpio, you've worked hard. You've just returned to the island. Go and have a rest first." Scorpio turned to the screen that had just lit up, saying with unusual respect, "Yes, President of the Fool." The ball-shaped room fell into silence again. After a long time, Tower's voice sounded. "Scorpio said that guy claimed to be a businessman. The Wheel of Fortune. He doesn't accept any cash and knows his every move. The Pope. To what extent can we do it?" Hangman suddenly spoke. His voice sounded particularly hoarse under the voice change. "Yes, that place. The Fool. It's the club, Tower. 100 years ago, wasn't it?" The priestess voice had a trace of uneasiness. "If it's really that place, what I'm worried about is whether Jessica has made any deal, and what the deal is. The Fool. Everyone don't panic. If that place is still there, it won't do anything to us. It's just a place for business, not our natural enemy. But for the sake of safety, we'd better be careful in the following period. The Wheel of Fortune. Then, let all the branches stop their activities temporarily. We need to observe for a while." Seconded. 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 1 day. 2 days. 2 days had passed. Yi Yin, who knew the principle of speed in war, sent the information left by Jessica to the headquarters at the first time and successfully controlled several spies in the headquarters. Not long after, Yi Yin received news from the headquarters that his position had been reinstated, and a special action team had been formed to prioritize the use of all resources to fight against the horrible cancer of the Michael Club. "When will you leave?" Ma Hao sighed. "I'll be leaving tonight." Yi Yin smiled and said, "The people from the headquarters will escort King Kong and me back as soon as they arrive. After that, I'm afraid I'll be busy for a long time." Ma Hao didn't say anything, but patted Yi Yan's shoulder hard. He believed that this outstanding guy would be able to make a big impact in the future. "Old Yi, old Ma." Suddenly, Ren Xiling's voice was heard. Sub-editor Run was shouting from afar. Beside her, Luochio was following her unhurriedly. On the 3rd day, Ren Xiling came to her husband's grave. Of course, Yi Yin and Ma Hao had jointly made up an excuse, saying that the reason why the letter pointed to this place was that Yi Yin was waiting for someone here. Ren Xiling certainly knew that Yi Yin was innocent, so she was relieved. The 4 of them gathered here. Silently, he sprinkled cup after cup of soju. Chapter 2:12. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Come in, please. Luochio returned to school on the 2nd day after Yi Yin left. The person who received him was still the same teacher, Wang Luo. Luochio came in front of Wang Luo. She sized him up and soon recognized that he was Professor Qin Fang's former student. She also remembered the problem of how to deal with the 2 students in this class. Therefore, Wang Luo smiled. "I remember, it's Luochio. So, have you made up your mind? Do you want to transfer to another class or wait for the newly hired teacher?" She didn't finish her words, but continued. but I'm afraid there's another bad news here. I'm not sure. Due to the small number of students, the school seems to be discussing the cancellation of this major. Although they're hiring teachers, but the effect isn't good. It's okay, Luocio said indifferently. I'm here to handle the withdrawal procedures. Withdraw? Wang Luo, who obviously didn't expect such an answer, was slightly stupefied at this moment, asking in astonishment, Student Luocio, are you dissatisfied with the school's handling? If so, you can say it. We'll respect the student's opinion. From the school's standpoint, Wang Luo did have the responsibility to retain such students. After all, it was not because of the student's mistake, but because of the school's teacher's problem. Wang Luo didn't know what kind of person this student was. If he spread the school's fault outside after leaving the school, it would be troublesome. No, it's just my personal reason, Luocio said politely. Teacher, please rest assured that I won't hold the school accountable. If you're worried, we can sign an agreement. Well, Wang Luo considered for a while. Would you like to wait for me? I'll make a phone call. Luocio nodded. Wang Luo left the office quickly and made a phone call outside the corridor. Not long after, she walked back quickly. It's okay. The leader said there's no problem. But as for the paperwork, I don't think we can do it today. Yeah. Wang Luo, who hadn't finished her words, covered her mouth at once. Frowning, she revealed a look of retching. Are you okay? Wang Luo took a few deep breaths and drank a mouthful of water before shaking her head. She lowered her head and reached out to touch her belly. Revealing a smile, she said, I'm fine. I've gotten used to it after a few days. Luocio smiled and said, Congratulations. Wang Luo sighed. I didn't want to have a child before, but in the end, I still found myself pregnant. Sigh, I'm still a little scared these days. But she subconsciously looked out of the window. It was the location of a large tree that was blown down by the typhoon not long ago. She gently stroked her belly and revealed a blissful smile. I have a feeling that this child will be a girl. Luocio nodded and said with a smile, Yes, I think she will be a very cute girl. Love Go Little Say, Never Thank You. Sub-editor Run, who was looking for news material on the street, looked up at the scorching sun and said to her assistant, Lizzie, go and buy 2 cups of milk tea. It's my treat. Sister Run, didn't you hurt your hand? Don't you need to abstain? The assistant rolled her eyes. Besides, milk tea is high in calories. The assistant pinched her slightly protruding belly. I'm not like you. I don't gain weight no matter how much I eat. Rin Xiling suddenly lost her interest. She looked at the people walking around in boredom. Suddenly, she said, I was wondering why there were so many students walking around in the streets today. Don't they have classes? Lizzie smiled and said, Summer vacation is here. School is on holiday. Sister Run, don't you know? Rin Xiling blocked the sun with her hand, looking at the blue sky, and sighed, Summer vacation, summer vacation, summer vacation, summer vacation. Sub-editor Rin suddenly grabbed her assistant's arm, squinting. Lizzie, didn't a holiday house ask us to do a report last week? Where's the information? Ah, Sister Run, didn't you say you were not interested? I turned it down on the same day. Hurry up. Find it for me. Tell them I'm interested. Even half the advertising fee is okay. Sister Run, the chief editor will explode with this discount. Don't worry. If he explodes, I'll send him sanitary pads. The hemostatic effect is absolutely good. As one of the assistants, it was not the first time for Lizzie to see the heroine's generosity. It was better to think about how to negotiate with the person in charge of the holiday house about the price. Although Run Xiling bragged that she would give half the price, she dared not to use it casually. 20% discount was already frightening. Alas, in the club, Boss Luo was reading a travel magazine leisurely. He just bought on the way back. It was a Russian travel guide. This was what he had promised Yi a long time ago. Although she didn't mention it, it was obvious that Luocio had this plan all along. The phone rang at this moment. It was Rin Xiling. Luocio suddenly had a bad premonition. He hesitated for a moment, but still picked it up. It was sub-editor Rin's extremely gentle voice that could make people have goosebumps. Luocio could even imagine that this woman must be squinting her eyes at this time. Baby, I heard you're on summer vacation. And then? Don't tell me you're going to continue tutoring during summer vacation. Well, go on. It's okay. If you're embarrassed, you can give me the phone number of your students' parents. I'll tell you. Tell me, what's the trouble you're looking for me for? Baby, let's go to the beach. Sunshine and beach. This is the summer vacation, right? Take your girlfriend with you. It's very rare for me to get a few reception coupons from my clients. It's too wasteful if I don't give them away. Luaccio tried hard to recall, and couldn't help but say, speaking of which, when did I give you the illusion that I have a girlfriend? That's settled. Rin Xiling was like an empress dowager listening to politics from behind a curtain. We'll set off tomorrow. You must bring your girlfriend out for me. If you don't bring her or don't go, then you'll have to wait for the hell of blind dates I'll arrange for you this summer vacation. That's settled. I have something else to do. Let's talk about it in detail in the evening. Beep. She was in a hurry. Closing the travel magazine in his hand, Luaccio put the mobile phone on the cover of the travel magazine and tapped the table with his fingers. So, when did his girlfriend's illusion appear? At this moment, the servant girl came out from the back hall. The brewed lemon black tea exuded a charming fragrance in the cool club. She put down the teacup and saucer first, then the teacup and the sugar bowl. Master, how many candies do you want today? Luaccio suddenly looked at Yi, blinking his eyes. By the way, do you have a swimsuit? Chapter 213. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, /go, /little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Lizzie looked at the two people in the driver's seat and the passenger's seat. Everyone in the company knew that Sister Ren had a very old son. It seemed that only a few old people in the company had seen him. Anyway, it was the first time for her to see him. Well, what was his feeling? He was probably a very quiet person, and his skin was very white. He didn't look like the kind of person who often exercised outdoors. At this age, he probably hadn't graduated from college or something. Anyway, in Sister Ren's car, she and Luaccio had only introduced each other to each other. It seemed to be difficult to talk. Lizzie began to scroll through the circle of friends on her mobile phone. There were some push news. Hey, Sister Ren, the weather forecast said that there seems to be a typhoon coming. Is there any problem with the typhoon? Ren Xiling was excitedly driving on the mountain highway. Seeing that the speed had reached 145 kilometers per hour, she didn't seem to be satisfied. It's summer. It will be strange if there is no typhoon. Lizzie always felt that Sister Ren was particularly excited today. It was just going to the beach, but it didn't seem to be necessary. Hey, there is a legend near this resort. Lizzie looked at her mobile phone and said excitedly as if she had discovered a new world. What legend? Probably because of professional habit, Ren Xiling subconsciously turned her head at this moment. But when she just turned her head, Luaccio, who was sitting next to her, pushed her face back. Drive. This should be the first sentence that Lizzie heard from Luaccio since she got on the car. I know. This was also the first time that Lizzie saw Empress Run, who almost ruled the entire editorial department, acting like an obedient child. It simply refreshed her understanding of Empress Run. Legend says, but Lizzie had to finish her words. At this time of the year in this bay, in a specific place, you can hear the song from the sea. Luaccio frowned, but Run Xiling snorted. Is this a legend? Is it the sound of the sea breeze passing through reefs, cliffs, caves, and so on? In my opinion, this is just a deliberate fabrication by the merchants in the tourist area to attract tourists. Was there a lack of such occurrences? Lizzie, we are media workers. Lizzie shook her head and said, No, I'm sure it's a song. It said that it's a language of unknown meaning. Oh, the person who posted this also recorded a part of it. Shall I play for you? The volume of the phone was turned up to the maximum, and some sounds could be vaguely heard. However, since they were traveling at high speed, the sound of wind resistance was rather loud in the car. Ren Xiling had no choice but to slow down. Seeing the car slow down, Luaccio was relieved. He closed his eyes so that he could better listen to the recording from the phone. She sang in a low voice, like a murmur. Luaccio couldn't distinguish what language it was, but he could tell that the voice was very clear and bright. It should be a female voice. Luaccio's heart suddenly moved. When she wanted to take a good look at this post, she found that Rin Xiling and Lizzie seemed to be distracted. He frowned and put his hand on the steering wheel. The turn was in front, but the car didn't turn. At the moment when the steering wheel turned, Luochio casually pressed the horn. The harsh horn suddenly made Rin Xiling quiver, and she quickly steadied the steering wheel with both hands. F***CK. I was scared to death. Rin Xiling was still scared, patting her *SS with one hand. And Lizzie, who just realized what had happened, also broke out in a cold sweat. The car stopped at the side of the road, and they could see the sea below. Rin Xiling took a long breath. This song is poisonous. I was distracted while listening to it. Lizzie nodded and said, yes, the person who posted it also said so. They said that they seemed to forget the time while listening to it. I didn't believe it at first, but now I really experienced it myself. Of course, I don't want to experience it again. Fortunately, Luochio came to her senses, or else. Ha! Lizzie made a face and stuck out her tongue, like a female ghost. Rin Xiling swallowed her saliva, but she saw that Luochio just looked out of the window, as if she didn't hear it. Anyway, let's talk about it when we arrive at the resort. Rin Xiling calmed down and restarted the engine. As for Lizzie, she didn't say anything about this legend. Finally, we're here. She had been driving since early in the morning, so it was already noon. The moment she got off the car, sub-editor Rin immediately stretched her body. From a distance, she was probably a very eye-catching person. Lizzie looked at her with envy, and then subconsciously looked at herself. She felt that it was better not to stretch. There was no harm without comparison. Alas, I'll carry it myself. Luochio went directly to the trunk and began to take out the luggage. It's okay. It's not heavy. Was it really not heavy? Lizzie was stunned. But looking at this young man, she didn't look like someone who often exercised. But he didn't seem to be strenuous with 3 big bags of luggage in his hand. Rin Xiling didn't care about it at this moment. She walked to Luochio's side, stretched out her hand, and put her hand on his shoulder. She whispered with a creepy smile, "Good boy, you told me last night that your girlfriend would come by herself. If I can't see it and find out that you lied to me, you can share a room with Lizzie tonight. I'll help you to get her drunk." Boss Luo had an impulse to hit this woman with a plastic bag. He sighed to himself. Because he knew this woman's terrible character, he chose to let Yi come directly. If they were in the car, it would probably be a very painful journey. No need. Luochio shook his head, looking ahead, and said, "She's here. She's here there." Rin Xiling followed Luochio's gaze and couldn't move her eyes away. "I'll go." It was a girl standing next to the entrance of the resort. She wore a plain white dress with a beige round sunshade hat. The breeze lifted her dress gently, and at the same time, her hair was also teased. The girl stroked the hair on her ear with one hand, looking at this side at this time. In the blink of an eye, her smile had already caused the natural mountains and waters to lose their original color. After a while, sub-editor Run recovered from her absent-mindedness. She took a long breath and said in a shocking tone, "I've decided, son. I'll help you to get her drunk tonight. I shouldn't have asked you Yi to come." Chapter 214. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. The resort was run by a couple with a daughter. The male host was Louis Hai. The female host was Luo Iu. The daughter was Louis Iyun. Because she had just finished the college entrance examination, she was helping her family in the resort during the summer vacation. The male host was in charge of the food, actually a chef. The female host and the daughter were in charge of entertaining the guests. There was also a 40-year-old woman who was in charge of doing odd jobs. This wasn't a large-scale resort. Although there were other large-scale resorts nearby, this resort seemed to be located in a remote location. It was surrounded by the sea and cliffs. It was a small family-style resort. The building that served as a store was probably a remodel of a former residential building. Then, 3 three-story buildings were sparsely built behind it to serve as guest rooms. There was a small yard in between, which was quite clean. The salty sea breeze blew in the courtyard, bringing with it the scent of the blue star flowers planted in the courtyard. The yard was filled with blue starflowers, green and blue intertwined like the sea. You can see the sea from this room. Are you satisfied? The female host, Luo Iu, led Luocio and others to the place where they would stay. She was quite enthusiastic. As for the boss, Louis Hai, he was a bit indifferent, but still maintained the most basic courtesy. She heard from Li Zi that the lady boss was in charge of everything, from the invitation to the discussion. I'll go prepare the food. You guys have a chat. Louis Hai didn't want to stay any longer, leaving the room. Luo Iu squeezed out a smile. Don't mind him, this guy is always like that. But his dishes are delicious, the best in this area. When they passed by a nearby village, Luocio saw a memorial arch with Louis Village written on it. Love, go little say, W. Chu, the female host's surname was Luo. She must have married here. The resort was located far away from the resort. In fact, the environment was not particularly good. As for the so-called sea, a part of it was actually blocked by the cliff in front of them. If there was any merit to it, it would probably be that it was relatively quiet. Evian, you stay here and greet the guests. I'll go make some tea. The little girl nodded obediently. She had lived here since she was young and had gone to school in a nearby town. Usually, when she had a room, she would come back to help out at home. She had very little contact with the big city, and even less contact with the people in the big city. The people she had interacted with were all guests from the nearby towns, and most of them were middle-aged and elderly. Young people generally wouldn't choose this place because there wasn't much entertainment. But all of a sudden, there were so many beautiful people. The little girl couldn't help but feel a little reserved. Rin Xiling wasn't really writing for this place, but as a professional, she definitely wouldn't be careless in this regard. Sub-editor Rin wanted to finish her work as soon as possible so that she could continue her plan. Therefore, she grabbed the little girl and started to ask her questions. Are there usually many customers here? Louis Yun shook her head, sighing as she wasn't too scheming. Not many. Even in the peak season, we can only receive about 10 customers a month. When the traffic is very light, it's already good enough if we can get 2 customers a month. Rin Xiling lowered her head and wrote something in her notebook. Then she raised her head. Why don't you open a resort over there, instead of here? Louis Yun seemed to hesitate for a moment. The little girl was probably not good with words. Her expression was too easy to be seen through. She suddenly glanced at the door, seeming to be worried about something. Rin Xiling's eyes turned. If it's inconvenient, it's okay if you don't want to tell me. Louis Yun nodded and then said, Mom said you want 2 rooms, but they're all double rooms. I'll make 1 more bed for this room. If we put them together, it's absolutely no problem for 3 people to sleep. Put a bed together? Rin Xiling suddenly smiled. No. Sub-editor Rin smilingly pointed at Luocio and Yi, speaking like a brothel keeper. These 2 share a room. Yes, we share a room. Unexpectedly, Luocio nodded directly. Rin Xiling gave a start, opening her mouth. What the hell? She thought Luocio would refuse at this time. Who would have thought that he would agree so directly? Could it be that he had already? Sure enough, the kids nowadays were all so precocious. In sub-editor Rin's mind, she began to deduce the wonderful content of what would happen after midnight. She looked at Yu Yi. She really couldn't find any fault with this girl. Although they didn't talk much recently, in Rin Xiling's eyes, such a quiet girl seemed to be a perfect match for Luocio. Even under Luocio's affirmative answer, she didn't feel shy at all. She was natural and unrestrained, like an old couple who didn't feel strange at all. Then come with me. But the little girl didn't seem to be able to let go of this aspect completely. She had to lower her head, walking out of the room in a hurry. Seeing Yu Yi smiling and following Luocio obediently, Rin Xiling touched her chin, muttering to herself, I miscalculated. Sister Rin, what did you miscalculate? Rin Xiling said with a straight face. I thought I knew my son thoroughly. He's a piece of wood, but unexpectedly, he's really boring. These 2 couldn't have done it many times, right? Sister Rin, don't be like this. I'm just a kid. Go away. Rin Xiling rolled her eyes at Li Zi, suddenly saying, Oh, stick to the wall and listen to the soundproofing of this room. What's wrong? Are you stupid? If it's too intense at night, can you control yourself? Rin Xiling hummed. Or, Do you want to do something embarrassing with me? Seeing Run Xiling stretching her claws, Lizzie suddenly leaned against the wall, saying in horror, Sister Run, I'm really just a kid. Don't mess with me. Hey, catch. Are you satisfied with this room? Liu Yin took a deep breath. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt more pressure to receive these 2 people than to receive 4 people just now. If not, there are more upstairs. Luoqiu shook his head. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, opening the door and walking to the balcony, looking at the cliff and the sea. In fact, there was a lawn outside, with a simple stone wall made of stones and cement. This holiday house was actually built in the middle of the hillside. Who's that? Luoqiu suddenly pointed at an old man sitting on a bench on the lawn outside. At this time, the old man was just holding a drawing board and looking into the distance. Oh, that's my grandpa. Liu Yiyun smiled. He's not a stranger, don't worry. Luoqiu nodded, walking down the small wooden ladder beside the balcony, seemingly walking towards the old man. This guest. Liu Yiyun gave a start. The servant girl smiled. It's okay, he's just walking. By the way, little girl, can you do me a favor? Oh, please. Can you take me to the kitchen? I want to prepare the food myself. The little girl gave a start. She had never encountered such a request. Luoqiu looked at the old man. He seemed to be in his 60s or 70s. He wore a hat and sat on the bench near the cliff. It seemed that he had been there for some time. The pencil used for scanning stayed on the drawing paper, seemingly not moving at all. Just a few strokes drew an outline, which vaguely looked like a sketch of a human body. The old man didn't seem to notice someone coming, or he didn't care about it, even if he did. He just looked at the sea ahead quietly. When the sea breeze blew, the blue star flower planted under the small stone wall swayed. Luoqiu sat at the other end of the bench, taking out his phone to take a picture of this moment. He lowered his head, fiddling with the photo, suddenly whispering, "Why don't you finish the drawing?" The old man didn't seem to hear it. Until the second gust of sea breeze blew. He said slowly, "I can't remember. Can't remember. Can't remember." He suddenly grasped the pencil in his hand, quickly drawing on the drawing paper. The crisscrossing lines were just meaningless, messy strokes. The vague outline was soon covered by the messy strokes, and the original appearance couldn't be seen anymore. I can't remember. Chapter 215. A genius will remember love in 1 second. I will provide you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Yu was a person who was good at talking. In Ren Xiling's opinion, she should think so. Ha! Miss Ren is so beautiful, and her career is so successful. I really admire you among women. Her clothes were a style that had been popular a few years ago. She discovered that it was probably done in a hairdresser in a nearby town. It wasn't good, but it wasn't bad either. Every part of her body had traces of being able to be dressed up, but there was a kind of feeling that couldn't be combined no matter what. Well, can I stand here? This way, you should be able to look thinner. Luo Yu fiddled with her hairstyle. By the way, Miss Ren, it's better to show the best part of my resort. I spent a lot of money to renovate it recently. It's a pity not to let people see it. Is there a need for this resort to exist? Although the nearby area was a tourist area, Ren Xiling still felt that she was cheated. She really shouldn't accept this small advantage. If she went to the resort to do a tour guide at her own expense, she was afraid that it would be more worry-free. Lady Boss, stand over here. Yes, this is the position. Very good, very good. Well, in this way, there is no need to block the sea view outside. As for people, of course, it was out of the focus, so it was cool there. Li Zi, give me the 70 to 200 millimeters lens. Okay. The lady boss was very satisfied. Looking at this Miss Ren who came from the big city and installed a long lens, she felt very professional. Although it was painful to spend the money, it was worth it. Unexpectedly, Ren Xiling stopped at this time and looked at the place where her lens pointed. This guy, what is he doing there? Luo Yu was stunned and subconsciously looked back. She saw the bench on the lawn, frowned, and quickly said, Sorry, Miss Ren, I'll go there. She didn't say it clearly and went out at this time. Sister Run, shall we follow and see? Li Zi asked at this time. Ren Xiling shook her head and said, No need. Let's walk around and take photos. I'll see if I can finish the manuscript tonight. The rest of the time is to play. Okay. The messy brush strokes had already filled the drawing paper with all kinds of irregular lines. In the end, it even became a huge whirlpool. The old man was constantly drawing a ball, and the words "I can't remember" kept repeating to himself. Sorry, sorry. At this time, the owner of the resort quickly walked to Luacio's side. Luo Iu hurriedly asked, Sir, this my old man didn't do anything to you, right? Will he do anything to me? Luocio looked at Luo Iu and suddenly asked. Luo Iu glanced at the old man. Seeing that he was just scribbling on the paper, she seemed to be relieved. She forced a smile and said, No, he's just an old man. His mind isn't very clear. Sometimes he can't recognize people, but he definitely won't hurt anyone. Alzheimer's disease? Luo Iu was stunned. What was this guy talking about? Luocio continued softly. I'm talking about Alzheimer's disease. Luo Iu nodded and sighed. She said bitterly, Alas, it's been a few years. These days, it's getting worse and worse. In order to take care of him, I'm really worried about him. Do you think it's easy for me? I'm married into this godforsaken place. I have to take care of the older ones, the younger ones, and this resort. Sigh. This time I invited you here to see if you can revive it. Otherwise, I'm afraid that after this new year, my family will have to eat rice bran. So please help me a lot. Luocio was not interested in listening to the owner's chatter here. From the owner's indifferent attitude and the owner's enthusiasm, he could roughly feel something. The wind is strong here. Luocio stood up and smiled. Take this old man back. Actually, this place is not bad. At least I prefer the quietness here. Oh, okay. Luo Iu nodded subconsciously. What should she say? She didn't know any high-ranking officials or nobles, nor did she have any powerful relatives. The most powerful official she had ever seen was the village secretary. However, this young man made her feel even more oppressed than when she saw the village secretary. She subconsciously followed the other party's instructions. Luocio had gone far away, but she could vaguely hear the voice behind her. Get up, old bastard. Don't frighten my guest. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble. You old bastard. How dare you wet yourself here? My God, what kind of sin have I committed? Get up. You old bastard, get up. What the hell are you drawing? The older you are, the more sick you are. It's better to let the monsters in the sea eat you. Get up. Song legend. Luocio returned to the room and closed the window. He sat on the deck chair by the window and gradually looked at the gray sky. At this time, the phone was turned on. It was the strange song that Li Zi had played in the car before. Boom! There was lightning in the sea. The Union. Luo Iu called her daughter after pulling her back from the lawn to the holiday house. But when she returned, she saw her husband sitting at the front desk of the store, drinking beer alone in broad daylight with a straight face. Her daughter heard the voice and rushed out. What's wrong, Mom? Luo Iu pulled her aside, asking quietly, What's your dad doing? Doesn't he need to work? It's not dark yet. Why is he drinking? Louis Iun glanced at her father, saying hesitantly, Just now, the most beautiful lady asked me to take her to the kitchen, and then, ours? Luo Iu frowned. Is she afraid that our kitchen is not clean? Louis Iun whispered, No. That lady said she would prepare the food, and Dad didn't need to do it. Then my father got angry and quarreled with that young lady. In the end, after that young lady showed off her knife skills, my father ran out to drink without saying a word. Luo Iu was stunned. Although her husband couldn't earn any money because he was guarding this holiday home, she really couldn't find his culinary skills in this area. Back then, if it wasn't for his culinary skills and the fact that he could make a name for himself, she wouldn't have married into this damned place from the neighboring town. But this bad-tempered guy became so dispirited after seeing someone's knife skills. It was the first time for her to see that. Grandpa, what's wrong? Louis Yin looked at her grandpa. Luo Iu turned around and looked at the old man, only to see that he was taking off his pants. She immediately said excitedly, You old bastard, I asked you to change your pants in your room, not here. What kind of sin have I committed to meet an old fart like you? And I married a good-for-nothing. Enough. You're so noisy. All you do is to quarrel. Do you know anything else? Louis High stood up suddenly. Go to the kitchen if you dare. Don't you feel ashamed to be kicked out by a little girl? Luo, Iu snorted. Louis Hai was speechless. His face turned red, and he snorted. I'm so unlucky to meet such a freak in your family. Fortunately, there's only one old bastard father-in-law. If there's another old bastard mother-in-law, I'll die of anger. Don't mention my mom. Louis Hai glared at her like a bull. He smashed the beer bottle on the ground. Say it again. What? Do you want to beat me? Go ahead. Go ahead. Louis Hai raised his hand. After taking a deep breath, he closed the door and walked out without looking back. Don't wait for me, for dinner. Hearing Louis Hai's voice, Louis Yun was so anxious that her eyes turned red. But she could only pull her mother, saying in a hoarse voice, Mom, don't be angry. There are guests here. Don't quarrel with Dad. I don't care either. Luo, Iu waved her hand. Walking in too. Louis Yun could only look at her grandpa, silently. He didn't know what happened, right? Chapter 216. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. It was close to evening. The dark clouds on the sea had spread to this side, and then the wind and rain came. When it was time for dinner, everyone gathered in the so-called canteen, which was converted from the former living room. In fact, there were only 3 round tables separated by a small screen. The canteen painted with white dust looked very simple, but the dishes served by Louis Yun blocked the mouths of Run, Xiling, and Lizzie. But no matter how much food there was no way to completely block sub-editor Ren's mouth, because Yu Yi was not here. Ren Xiling, who didn't have a good conversation all day, naturally wanted to get to know each other at the dinner table. She's not feeling well, resting in the room. Luochio said casually. Not feeling well? Ren Xiling gave a start, looking at Luochio suspiciously, but asked with concern, did she get sunstroke? Is it serious? Do you want to see her? No need. Just let her sleep for a while. Luochio shook his head. It was better to say that Yi didn't need to eat than to say that she didn't have this function. No matter how good the food was, it would be quite troublesome to clean it up after she ate it. Louis Yun, who was carrying out the last dish, heard it and said subconsciously, Is that lady tired? After all, she cooked so much food at once. How much? It was easy to find seafood at the seaside. The table was full of sashimi, seafood soup, 9-section prawns, steamed fish, sea snails, and stir-fried delicacies, and the dishes were arranged carefully. This table of delicacies was like a 3-star Michelin restaurant, but now they were served in this simple canteen. Louis Yun still felt it was unreal. She more or less understood her father's feeling of powerlessness. Ah, these are made by Yi? Ren Xiling opened her mouth, obviously surprised. The little girl smiled and said, Yes. Originally, we shouldn't have asked the guests to do this, but that young lady said that it would be better if she cooked it for you personally. Ren Xiling's eyes lit up. She picked up a piece of sashimi with her chopsticks and put it into her mouth. Even though she didn't dip it in soy sauce and didn't use the usual wasabi paste, she used mashed radish instead. The layer of fat on the sashimi and the fish meat seemed to have been calculated as they intersected with each other. He could feel the sweet fish fat and fresh fish meat on his taste buds, along with the slightly spicy and refreshing taste of the white radish. It exploded all of a sudden, and then he felt as if ice and snow were slowly melting. Ren Xiling subconsciously closed her eyes, revealing an intoxicated expression. She suddenly widened her eyes. This daughter-in-law, I'm definitely... No, you're definitely going to marry her. He was completely bought over with just a table of dishes. Luochio looked at Ren Xiling as if she was mentally retarded, but he threw a piece of peeled 9-section prawn into Ren Xiling's bowl. Love go little say, net Ren Xiling, who had long been accustomed to this, rolled her eyes and said, Do you want to shut me up? Luochio pretended that he didn't hear it. Instead, he looked at Louis Yun. Won't the boss and his wife come out to eat together? We can't finish the dishes here. It'll be more lively if we eat together. And that grandpa... Louis Yun shook her head. My dad went out. As for my mom, she said she's a bit tired, so she's resting in her room. As for my grandpa, he's not used to eating with others. She couldn't say that her family had a quarrel just now, right? The little girl sighed in her heart. How could she not wish for her family to gather together and have a peaceful meal? Is anyone here? Is anyone here? Suddenly, a loud and clear voice came from outside. A young man came in, about 27 or 28 years old. His clothes were wet, and he was carrying a black leather suitcase. He looked like he was in a hurry. Alas, I can't see any shops or villages in this place. Fortunately, I found such a hotel. Louis Ian took the young man to the cafeteria, letting him sit at the table nearby. Perhaps it was not convenient to greet him in the front, because the helper had already finished work before the rain. Sir, this is a holiday house, not a hotel, Louis Ian said in a charming manner. The young man dyed his hair blonde, wearing a vest with a huge tattoo of a chilan on his left arm and an earring on his ear. Such a dress might be too shocking for a girl who lived in such a peaceful place. Louis Ian didn't get too close to him. The young man waved his hand casually. Whatever, I'll stay here tonight. Go and prepare something for me to eat. Oh, the dishes on the table look pretty good. Give me one as well. The young man glanced at Luacio's table, squinting his eyes and saying. The girl was embarrassed. Sir, those dishes were prepared by the guests themselves. Our restaurant doesn't have the ability to prepare them. What a shitty place is this? Do the guests need to prepare their own food? The young man frowned. Oui. Louis Ian didn't know what to say at once. The young man was dissatisfied. Then what do you have here? Louis Ian had to say, my dad went out. He's in charge of the kitchen. If you don't mind, I can cook some dishes. The girl lowered her head. Perhaps she didn't have much confidence in her cooking skills. The young man turned his eyes, walking straight to Luacio's table, pulling out a chair and sitting down without greeting them. He put his hands on the table, squinting his eyes and smiling. Guys, how about setting up a table? I don't think you can finish all the food on the table. I'm really hungry here. If it's convenient for you guys, I'll pay some money. Let's have a meal together. Rin Xiling ignored him. First, she slowly finished the prawn meat in the bowl. Then, she wiped her lips and smiled at the young man. The young man felt there was a chance, smiling too. When he was about to take the bowl and chopsticks, Rin Xiling said indifferently, not for sale. Sell what? It was made by her future daughter-in-law to show filial piety to her future mother-in-law. Sub-editor Rin didn't want to use it to greet a stranger. Who said I can't finish it? I'll finish it even if I'm stuffed to death. The young man narrowed his eyes even more. He suddenly chuckled and said, I think the seafood on this table is quite presentable. 5,000. If you let me eat a portion, I'll give you 5,000. 5,000? That's a lot. Rin Xiling was surprised and then said expressionlessly, not for sale. Besides, can you go away if you don't have anything else? Don't disturb us eating. The young man shrugged his shoulders and stood up suddenly. He stood and looked down, looking at Luacio, Rin Xiling, and Lizzie, whistling and chuckling. What a pity, such a good table of food. Don't eat it. His face suddenly darkened. Don't eat it. The young man reached out with lightning speed and grabbed the table with both hands. It seemed that this guy was going to flip the table, looking like a rogue tyrant. Unexpectedly, the young man's face turned red, and he couldn't flip the table at all. His eyes suddenly became astonished, looking at the three people in front of him. The two women were holding bowls, looking at him in astonishment. Only the silent young man pressed his palm on the table, intentionally or unintentionally. At this moment, the young man's hands seemed to feel that they had been pricked by something and quickly retracted them. Just when he was astonished, Luacio picked up some dishes with chopsticks. If you're hungry, eat something. He slowly pushed the bowl of food over. It doesn't cost anything. Just eat. The young man swallowed his saliva secretly, subconsciously wanting to pick up the bowl. Unexpectedly, when he held the bowl in his hand, he felt the terrifying weight of the bowl. No matter how hard he tried, it was as if he couldn't lift the bowl. The young man with a special background suddenly knew that he might have met a master, and he was so scared that his back was covered with cold sweat. Why don't you eat it? Luacio glanced at it and smiled. It tastes good. The young man was suddenly scared. He looked at Luacio, and his heart jumped. If I could take it, I would have picked it up long ago. I'm sorry, I lost my temper because I was too hungry. He swallowed his saliva, stepped back, and waved his hand. I'll eat the food made by the little girl. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Looking at this young man with blonde hair, tattoos and earrings on his arms, and a domineering aura, apologizing and retreating in a comical manner, Ren Xiling opened her mouth and whispered in astonishment. Is this guy mentally retarded? Lizzie said thoughtfully, Sister Run, I think it's Luocchio's indifference that scared the gangster away. You see, ordinary people would have been scared if they met him. We are not afraid, and we are calm. This kind of person is probably worried about our background, so he didn't act rashly. Well, it makes sense. Ren Xiling looked at Luocchio and sized him up. My boy is really scary when he doesn't talk. He is the type who is difficult to get along with, right? Lizzie added silently in her heart. In fact, she didn't dare to look at Luocchio directly. Luocchio said, Hurry up. I'll take some leftovers back to my room. You're tired today? Go to bed early. I have to rush for my manuscript, Ren Xiling said while eating. Boy, I'm not feeling well tonight. Don't make trouble for me. Was it better to ask that guy to flip the table? Ren Xiling said again. Be careful at night. Lock the door. That guy didn't look like a good person. Remember to shout if something happens. Lizzie nodded. After a while, Ren Xiling and Lizzie went back to their room. Luocchio was pretending to pack food. Louis Yun ran into the kitchen and didn't dare to come out. The young man suddenly looked over, hesitated for a while, and then said carefully, Senior, I'm sorry to offend you just now. You didn't do anything. It's nothing. Luocchio said indifferently. The young man took a deep breath. I felt a light demon aura, so I wanted to test it. I didn't expect there's such a senior here. I'm just showing off my slight skill in front of an expert, making a fool of myself. Luocchio didn't respond. The bowl and the table couldn't be lifted because they experienced two different forces. There were 4 different forces altogether. 2 of them were made by himself. As for the other 2, it was Lizzie. She first fixed the table, and then Luocchio's force. The bowl of food was the same, 2 different forces, one of which came from the club boss, or the young man wouldn't be so embarrassed. Seeing Luocchio didn't say anything, the young man knew some senior cultivators were like this, so he had to say, Now that I think about it, the little demon beside you should be your servant. Luocchio didn't want to talk to him, and threw him a you're so annoying look. The young man didn't seem to feel it, suddenly whispering, Senior, you came here for that legend, right? What legend? Luocchio stopped. The young man smiled. Senior, let's not beat around the bush. Dozens of years ago, a sea monster appeared in this area. All these years, they have been disappearing without a trace, but recently, there are some signs of them reappearing, aren't there? Saying this, the young man stood up, clasping his hands towards Luocchio, and bowed slowly. To be honest, I came here to find the trace of that sea monster. I hope Senior can join hands with me to eliminate this sea monster from the deep sea. Not interested, Luocchio said indifferently. I'm not here for this. Hey, Senior, please wait. The young man hurriedly shouted, I'm Momo, the successor of Dragon Tiger Mountain. Senior, Luocchio had already walked out of the canteen. Momo frowned, sitting down again, mumbling to himself, I heard this is the territory of Xian Xian Huan Jin Dao. Is he the successor of this mysterious sect? If not for this, then what is he here for? Momo's fingers tapped on the table, thinking, Master said I was born with great inspiration, and now I'm much more powerful than him when he was young. I haven't met a match on the way down the mountain. It's rare to meet a master. Should I have a try? I didn't prepare well just now, so I suffer a loss. I can't ruin the reputation of Dragon Tiger Mountain like this. Guest, your food. Louis Yun carried the plate, walking out carefully. Momo smiled. He wiped his wet hair back, taking the plate from Louis Yun's hands, saying softly, Little girl, I'm sorry, I didn't scare you just now. Looking at Momo's completely different spirit, Louis Yun was stunned. This man was quite good-looking. It's okay. Yin 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 yin. Chapter 217. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Ice cubes were added into the cold water. The club boss was sitting on a deck chair near the French window, listening to the wind and rain. The wind and rain by the sea were different from those in the city. Dragon Tiger Mountain? Yi stood beside Luochio, answering his question. Basically, I didn't know much about the Eastern Taoist Circle, so I don't know much about the division of this land. But I've heard of Dragon Tiger Mountain. It's famous in the circle. Luochio shook the ice cubes in the cup, saying softly, I didn't hear much about Dragon Tiger Mountain when I was a child, but most of the stories were about catching ghosts and subduing demons. The Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain should be called that. You didn't seem to care too much, saying indifferently, as long as this Momo doesn't do anything unnecessary, it's okay. Miss Maid said and picked up Boss Luo's mobile phone. Before this, the strange song had been playing on a loop in the phone. She said softly, even if it's just a recording, it can still penetrate into the soul. The person who sang, it seemed to be singing with his soul. Siren. I don't know which kind it is. In Western legends, there are some kinds of sirens with beautiful songs. Luochio asked curiously, have you ever seen a siren? Yi smiled. I once met a siren in the Barents Sea. But this race almost died out. If that siren is still alive, she might have become old. Luochio asked, does this song sound like a siren? Yi shook her head. Sirens usually don't sing such sad songs. She closed her eyes and used her heart to feel what the song was trying to convey. Suddenly, she said, but if you put your heart into it, it might not be impossible. But Miss Maid always took responding to her master as her first creed. This kind of weather is a good time for the siren to breathe. Master, Yi, go to the coast to have a look. Maybe we can find something. Luochio put down the cup. His hand stopped in the air, seeming to be thinking about something. Then he waved his hand. No, let unfold naturally in front of us this time. Otherwise, we'll lose the fun of exploring. For Luochio, if it wasn't necessary, the most boring way was to pay a certain amount of lifespan to get the ability of almost omniscient information. The boss of the club grabbed the servant girl's hand and changed his mobile phone to soft music. He said softly, since you're here, just be a tourist and have a vacation. Yi smiled faintly. Her gaze quietly swept past the door, but she did not alarm the pair of peeping eyes that were hidden outside the door. Sub-editor Ren's eyes. At this time, Ren Xiling was relieved to see the two strolling in the room with the music. She tiptoed and stepped back. This guy is so romantic. Yeah, hurry up, hurry up. The wind and rain came and went quickly. When they woke up the next day, the sky had cleared up and the blue sea stretched as far as the eye could see. According to Louis Iyun, the guest only stayed for one night and left early in the morning. The little girl wasn't happy about completing such a temporary business deal. Instead, a worried expression appeared on her face. Because the boss of the resort, Louis Hai, hadn't come back since he left yesterday afternoon. The little girl tried to call him, but his phone was turned off. When did your dad not leave for a couple of days in a fit of anger? Humph, that loser better not come back, or I'll be angry when I see him. Luo, Iyu scolded with anger. At the same time, it was the first sentence that Luochio and others heard when they came out of the room. Seeing the distinguished guests wake up, the landlady put on a smiling face. Miss Rin, you're awake. I'll prepare breakfast for you right away. Rin Xiling said, no need, we're going to have a look at other places. Luo Iyu wasn't satisfied. Miss Run, this shouldn't you continue to give me this resort? Before she could finish her words, Rin Xiling had already said with ease, Madam, if you want people to come here for a trip, you have to let them know what else they can do here besides the accommodation, right? If you don't introduce the surrounding places, why would they come here? They'd better stay in a hotel. Luo Iyu hurriedly said, you're right, Miss Rin is right. How about this? I'll let my girl lead the way for you. You're not familiar with this place, so it's better to have someone follow you. Rin Xiling thought for a while, then nodded. At this time, Luo Iyu pulled her daughter to the side and carefully ordered, keep an eye on these people. If they're just playing around and not working, tell me. We can't just spend this advertising fee for nothing. How should she say it? After all, Luo Iyu is still her mother. The little girl just nods silently, Even though Luo Iu has always been like this, the little girl still doesn't associate her with Mother Lu or Old Lady Wei in the articles she has read in textbooks. Mom, I'm going out. Grandpa hasn't had breakfast yet. Okay, I'll get it done. He won't starve. Luo Iu waved her hand and interrupted her impatiently. Though her tone wasn't good, the girl had been used to it after so many years. For the girl, it was quite stressful to be sandwiched between several city people. Especially, there was a woman with excellent cooking skills who was much more beautiful than the stars on TV. Louis Iyun felt like an ugly duckling. Alas, it's not easy for you, kid. Your mother probably asked you to keep an eye on us, to see if we're playing. Run Xiling, who was driving, suddenly said. Louis didn't know how to reply, so she didn't know how to say it now. No, Mom is afraid that you don't know the way and will get into trouble, so okay. Ren Xiling shook her head. I've taken your money, so I'll do it seriously. I won't flatter you or slander you on purpose. Just write whatever you want. Thank you so much. Miss Ren. She wasn't Ren Xiling's opponent at all. However, such a simple girl was probably the type who could be easily bullied, right? Luochio didn't want to embarrass the girl, so he asked, Are there any scenic spots here? Louis Yin suddenly became spirited. There are no big scenic spots here, but there are some small ones. Well, there's a heaving sea cliff in front. Let me take you there. With blonde hair and fashionable clothes, Momo was very eye-catching walking in Louis Village. However, it couldn't compare to a kind of flirtatious slut called Shammate that was popular here a few years ago. Therefore, although the people in the village looked askance, it wasn't to the extent that they couldn't avoid it. Besides, what if he was a tourist? The entire Louis Village was running holiday houses. Sir, do you need a hotel? We have a one-stop service. Are you the boss here? Are you a local? Yes. You can relax 100 times. It's absolutely safe here. The middle-aged boss smiled brightly because of his yellow teeth. Momo thought for a while. Okay, help me find an old man. Old man? The middle-aged boss gave a start, looking at Momo up and down with a weird expression. Then he hesitated. Sir, do you really want an old man? How old is he? If he's too old, I'm afraid I can't find him. Momo said indifferently. Of course, the older the better. I don't mind if you find the oldest one, as long as she speaks clearly, has a good memory, and is not muddle-headed. The middle-aged boss swallowed his saliva. Well, the oldest woman here is more than 70 years old. I don't know if she's willing or not. Momo frowned, throwing out a stack of banknotes, smiling casually. Don't worry, I'll reward you handsomely if you do it well. He learned this kind of forthrightness when he went down the mountain. What he wanted was this kind of temperament. Yin Yin Aunt Lu, Old Lady Wei, from Lu Sun's work Blessing. Chapter 218. A genius remembers love in 1 second /small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Momo seriously doubted the efficiency of the boss. It had been more than an hour, but he still hadn't found her. With his extraordinary skills, it was not difficult for him to find a source of money in the city. The current successor of Mount Longhu, who had a Jianghu dream, would occasionally rob the rich to help the poor without leaving a name for himself. But at the same time, he also knew that time was money, so he had lost the patience to continue waiting here. Just as he was about to leave, the middle-aged businessman walked in with a disgusting smile on his face. Sir, I've finally found the person you wanted. The boss wiped his forehead hard. You don't know, this Annie hasn't done this for many years. This time, I almost had to kneel on the ground before I managed to invite the auntie over. But don't worry, this auntie is famous in the past. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. When I was young, I also had a taste of it. What was this guy saying? Momo looked at him in astonishment. However, he just wanted to find an old man. Since he had brought him here, he didn't have much time to pay attention to this guy's words. All right, call him in. The merchant boss chuckled and said, Don't worry, I'll definitely be satisfied. Although it took a lot of time, Ani hasn't seen anyone for a long time, so it took some time to dress up. Come, Ani Golden Flower. Momo watched as the middle-aged businessman walked in with an Annie. Luckily, he wasn't scared to death at first glance. Her face, which was like an old tree bark, was smeared with bright red blush on both sides of her face. Her shriveled lips were also smeared with bright red lipstick. Her white hair was coiled up with a small yellow flower. It should have just been plucked. The Annie was wearing an old-fashioned Chong Sam, but it couldn't hide her bloated figure. In short, this Annie was holding a silk handkerchief in her hand as she leisurely walked over. The shop owner closed the door with a smile. "Have fun. Don't worry. No one will disturb you." Momo moved his lips. His hearing was actually very good. At this moment, even though the middle-aged merchant had already closed the door and left, he could still vaguely hear his muttering voice. "I don't really understand these city dwellers. How can they eat such heavy flavors? You've eaten too many delicacies, and now you want to chew on some pigskin cream?" Looking at this Ani taking the initiative to sit beside him, throwing out a wink that could cause 10,000 damage, and lightly bumping into him with her body, Momo, who had a martial arts dream and was polishing his heroic spirit, suddenly shivered. He already knew what the shopkeeper had misunderstood. The aunt's eyes lit up as she grabbed Momo's hand, giggling. "Such a young man, how old are you? Where did this monster come from?" "I'll take you in." Momo, the successor of the Taoist master of Mount Longhu, had a profound power flowing in his body like a galloping alpaca. There seemed to be the faint sound of wind and thunder in the air. However, this Annie had long been polished by the passage of time, and her ears were no longer as sensitive as when she was young. She had no idea that she was in the middle of a storm. The Annie stood up and smiled. Her small mouth, which had long been reduced to only her gums, opened and said, "Little brother, it's getting late. Let's play early. Be gentle when you take me in." Momo took a deep breath. His reason was on the verge of collapse. He stretched out his hand and poked the woman's forehead with force as he chanted an incantation. Only then did the ant stop. Looking down, Momo emitted an awe-inspiring aura like a stone statue worshipped in an old temple. His eyes flashed with golden lightning as he shouted in a low voice. That Ani trembled slightly, her heart pounding. Then she looked at Momo in awe. "Listen, I'm the successor of the Taoist master of Mount Longhu. I'm here to get rid of the evil spirits. I'm only looking for you because I want to know more about the monsters in the sea. You better show some respect." The ant's heart was beating fast. Looking at Momo's awe-inspiring righteousness, she knelt down at once. She didn't know what a high-tech civilization was, but she had heard about monsters and gods since she was young. She didn't worship the gods every day, so she felt she had met a living immortal. "Ah, great immortal, great immortal. This old woman doesn't know great immortal. I'm sorry for offending you." Momo sat down, pinching his fingers into the shape of a sword, pointing at her. "This Taoist master wants to ask you, do you know what happened to the sea monsters dozens of years ago?" The ant hurriedly nodded. I know. I'll never forget that for the rest of my life." "Tell me about it in detail." Momo shouted again, using a mysterious Taoist technique to shock the other's mind. "Don't hide anything, otherwise there will be a bloody disaster." I know. The Annie trembled and stood up without hesitation. She lowered her head and said, That was more than 40 years ago. Over 40 years ago, a horrible thing happened in Louis Village. Since then, the entire Louis Village was in chaos. Everyone was in a panic, hiding in their own rooms, rarely coming out. The Ani sighed and said, "I still remember that day. Like last night, there was a sudden rainstorm. The boat on the shore was overturned at once. Suddenly, a huge clap of thunder came from the sky and happened to land on the cliff. The next stone struck down a huge boulder and rolled into the sea. This is the sea cliff." Louis Yun pointed at the cliff in front. Her voice was like an oriole's. It sounded along with the wind under the influence of the girl's unique vitality. "This mountain road was built 10 years ago for tourism development. When we were little, we couldn't get there without half a day." Driving along the small road built by the mountain road, Luo Chio looked at the exquisite edge and asked with interest, "Why does this cliff seem to be missing a corner?" Louis Yun said, "I heard that a long time ago, there was a thunderbolt here and it was split open at once." "Split?" Ren Xiling gave a start. Louis Yun nodded. At this moment, Li Zi suddenly exclaimed, "Look, Is there someone standing on the top of the cliff? Chapter 219. Genius 1, second, remember, love, divided by, go divided by little? This is a wonderful novel for you to read. 40 years ago, a horrible thing happened in Louis Village, but it wasn't about the lightning striking the Chow Cliff. Love, go little, say, net, chew, because it was just the beginning for the people in Louis Village. From then on, there was an old man living alone, then a strong young man, and then a child. A strange disease started to spread in this closed fishing village. Strange disease? What kind of disease? Momo frowned. Even though a few decades had passed, the auntie still had a terrified expression on her face when she thought about it. She trembled as she said, "That's not a strange illness. It's the devil's curse." "Yes, it's a curse. I saw it with my own eyes. One of my sisters. So horrible. So horrible. They're not human beings. They're monsters." "Quiet," Momo scolded. A golden light flashed on his fingertip, and he pointed at the middle of the ant's eyebrows again. The auntie calmed down a little, but she still had a panicked expression on her face. She widened her eyes. At first, it was the hands, then the feet. In the beginning, what grew out were antlers. Then, they became densely packed and hard. Finally, it was like corals at the bottom of the sea. His arms, legs, they've all turned into corals. The ant turned back, pointing at a corner of the room with her trembling finger. "That day I saw it when I came in. She was hiding here." She hid behind the door, shrinking her body. She looked at me, frightened and panicked. I was so scared that I almost fell down on the ground. I ran out. Momo didn't speak. The ant paused for a while before continuing. "It's the punishment of the sea god. Old immortal Huang said that we were disrespectful to the sea god, so we were punished." "Who's old immortal Huang?" Momo asked suddenly. The ant said, "She's the old immortal Huang. She's very efficacious. She can do divination and invite the dead. The children in the village are just 1 month old. If they're scared, they'll invite her to shout the alarm." Momo sneered in his heart. Old immortal Huang? Old fraud Huang? A few decades ago, those who pretended to be gods and deceived ghosts in the backward villages were not the true disciples of any Taoist sections. Some of them had learned some superficial knowledge from somewhere, and some of them were just tricks to deceive others. What happened after that? The ant glanced at Momo with hesitation, but looking at his serious eyes, she didn't dare to keep anything from him. She said in a low voice, "Old Fairy Huang said that there is only one way to appease the sea god. That is to return the wife that the sea god likes to the sea god. Otherwise, the entire Louis village will be cursed and become motionless corals." "What's with the sea god's wife?" Momo didn't understand. "Love, go little, say, Netku," the ant said. "Since ancient times, people in Louis village don't marry outsiders. However, a few years before that, a fisherman married an outsider. I don't know where that woman came from. I heard that she was rescued by a fisherman at the beach." The ant paused. "Old immortal Huang said that the woman was supposed to marry into the sea, but she didn't arrive. It turned out that she was taken home, married, and had a baby. The sea god was furious when he knew that, so he offended our Louis village." "Then you sacrificed the woman to the sea god?" Momo frowned. The ant nodded, saying in a low voice, "Just at the place where the sea cliff was struck by thunder. That day, the entire village came. We tied the woman up, did a ritual, and then threw her down." "Bastard. Ridiculous." Momo patted heavily on the table, snorting, "You guys are disregarding human life." He took a deep breath, looking at the ant who didn't dare to talk, snorting. Then, everyone in the village was cured. Only then did the ant's submissiveness say. Later, immortal Huang sent people to gather all the people who were cursed and sent them into the sea as dowry. But from then on, the people in the village never had this kind of problem again. Everyone was cured. Momo narrowed his eyes, pondering for a while before asking, "Then, what happened to the old witch?" The auntie said, "Later, some soldiers came to the village and took her away. They said that they wanted to break the seal and build the letters. They said that they wanted to break the 4 olds, stupid, ignorant, muddle-headed. After saying 3 sentences, Momo snorted and patted on the ant's forehead. After she fainted, he heaved a heavy sigh and left this place. In recent years, a new secretary was sent here to develop Louis Village into a vacation place. The Here the Sea cliff was also developed into a tourist spot. A guardrail was built here, and a stone tablet was set up, engraved with the legend that the Here the Sea cliff was struck by lightning. Lizzie found Louis High sitting on the guardrail at the top of the cliff, tottering as if he would fall down at any time. Louis Yun was scared out of her wits. Ren Xiling ran all the way, and it didn't take long for the Red Mini Clubman to reach the top. Louis Yun rushed out of the car at once. There were a lot of beer cans scattered where Louis High was sitting. A bicycle beside him had fallen down, probably because of the strong wind. "Dad, don't do stupid things." Louis Yun's eyes turned red. She ran to Louis High's side and grabbed his arm. Luckily, Louis High didn't intend to resist. LV High looked at Louis Yun with drowsy eyes. He recognized Louis Yun after a while. "Yun, you're here?" "Huh. Come on, drink with Dad." "Huh. Dad, you come down first." "Why should I come down? It's good here. Look at the beautiful scenery. Look at the sea. Look at the cool wind." Louis High might have stayed here for a whole night. His body was wet from the rain and hadn't dried up yet. This guy might have been cold for a whole night. His lips were pale. Ren Xiling glanced at Luochio, winking at him. Luochio nodded. The two of them walked behind Louis High, grabbing his shoulder and pulling him down from the guardrail. Louis High was still in a daze. He crawled on the ground, trying to grab a beer can on the ground. Suddenly, Louis High turned around like a madman, shaking his head, pointing his finger and yelling, "What do you want to do? You guys, you devils, what do you want to do? Isn't it enough that you threw my mother down? Come on, throw us down too. Come on, you bastards. Come on, come on." He burst into tears. Chapter 220. Genius 1. Second, remember love, divided by, go divided by little. Say Annette, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Louis High was drunk. After a while, he fell down on the ground, seemingly falling asleep. "Love go little say W." Churin Xiling touched his forehead, frowning. "You have a high fever. I'm afraid you've been in the rain all night. Little girl, where's the hospital in your village?" Louis Yun hurriedly answered. "There's no hospital, but a small clinic. Anything will do." Ren Xiling hurriedly arranged. "Boy, you, and you wait here. I'll pick you up after sending him to the clinic." Luochio said, "No need. Let's walk back. It's not too far." Ren Xiling didn't say much, just nodded. "Okay, I'll call you later." Luochio watched the car leave. There was no one on Here the Sea cliff at this moment. It was early in the morning, without the incident just now. It could make people feel relaxed and happy. Luochio's fingers moved slightly. Those scattered beer cans and garbage nearby flew up in an orderly manner, flying into the trash bin next to a pavilion for tourists to rest. Luochio walked to the stone tablet that recorded the history of Here the Sea cliff, carefully reading the record on it, saying, "Was it really struck by lightning?" Yi looked at the environment on the cliff top, then flicked her hair that was blown by the wind, saying indifferently, "I'm afraid it's because the environment here is in the position of the wind. The sea is very humid. The rocks on the cliff have been loosened after years of wind and rain." Miss Maid pointed to the edge of the cliff and said, "Usually, thunder is accompanied by a storm. I think the thunder happened when the rock was about to loosen." Luochio nodded. He also had the same idea. He walked to the edge of the railing and poked his head out to look down. Below the vertical cliff, there were raging waves and uneven reefs. If a person fell from here, it would be more or less the same, right? No wonder Louis Yun looked so frightened. Did he just say that his mother was thrown down from here? Luochio frowned. Yi nodded and said, "Yes, he did say something like that. And it seems like it wasn't just some drunken nonsense. As for that kind of anger, he must have experienced something personally." Luochio suddenly said, "I want to take a look at the village over there." The small clinic in the village was opened more than 20 years ago by a young man who had returned from studying medicine in the city. The medical equipment was naturally old, and some had even been phased out, but it was obviously well maintained. It could be seen that the doctors here cherished these things very much. from a young man to a white-haired man. The doctor was no longer young, but he gave people a reassuring feeling. He looked at Louis Yun with a smile. It's nothing serious. He'll be fine after a few days of infusion and taking some medicine after the fever subsides. Your father's body is good. He'll get better soon. But don't drink too much. You take care of him here. I'll go out. Thank you, doctor, Louis Yun said gratefully. Seeing that Louis Hai was fine, Run Xiling and Lizzie also felt reassured. At this time, looking at the little girl's better face, sub-editor Ren's professional gossiping spirit came up again. She looked at the little girl, squinting her eyes and asking, "By the way, your father said he threw someone down. What's that about?" Louis Yun gave a start. She shook her head. "I don't know. I thought it was my father's drunken nonsense." Run Xiling turned her eyes, suddenly saying, "Your father said, Mom. That's your grandma, right? By the way, I haven't seen your grandma." Louis Yun said, "Neither have I. I heard from my father that my grandma passed away when he was very young. I've asked about it several times, but my father didn't mention it. Grandpa didn't mention it either, but my mom did." She looked at the door of the ward quietly, as if she was afraid that someone was hiding there. She said cautiously, she said she was killed by the people in the village. The little girl plucked up her courage, gritting her teeth. "Sister Run, in fact, I've always wanted to know what happened to my grandma, but I couldn't find it. I asked some classmates, they also asked about it at home, but their families didn't tell me. I want to know." Rin Xiling said, "You want me to help you investigate?" The little girl nodded seriously. "Yes. Sister Rin, you're a reporter. You must have better methods than me. I've always saved some pocket money, some more than 1,000. No need." Rin Xiling shook her head. The little girl said disappointedly, "It's still too little." Rin Xiling laughed, touching the little girl's head. "I may not be able to find anything. After all, you haven't found anything for so many years. But if you really find something, you can treat me to a seafood feast when we get back." "Ah, really?" The little girl was overjoyed. Rin Xiling nodded. "I'll take a stroll outside. I'll come back to see if your father has woken up. If not, I'll drive you back." "Okay." Rather than calling it a village, it would be better to say that it was gradually developing into a township. Basically, there were 2 or 3-story self-built buildings. What used to be a small fishing village had now become a street full of small seafood restaurants. Naturally, there were many small hotels. Luocio saw a place that looked like a bar, but it wasn't open yet. This place was different from Louis Hai's lonely resort. They could meet some tourists on the way. Maybe it was because the summer vacation had just arrived. Some young people had already met each other and planned to enjoy the summer from here. Boss Luo strolled around the small stalls on the street. "Young man, do you want to stay in a hotel? We're very safe here. We only have one road service." "You know," the middle-aged businessman with a mouth full of yellow teeth called out with a smile at this moment. Luocio glanced at the back of this guy. It was a medium-sized, reconstructed hotel. "Let me tell you, our service is very good. Just now a young man came. He was very happy." Luocio smiled. "Really? How happy?" The businessman walked over and whispered in Luocio's ear, "Bro, I'm telling you. Don't tell me I'm the one who said it to you." "Haha." That young man just now found himself an old woman who had lost her teeth. Now he's having fun. The club boss, who had seen a lot of things, gave a start, thinking that people's desires were really varied, and so on. He shook his head. His interest ended here. "Sorry, I'm just strolling around," Luocio said. Seeing this young man was about to leave, the boss became anxious, hurriedly holding his hand. "Hey, young man, don't get me wrong, it's not like this. It's just a special request from that customer. I just want to tell you that I can find her here, no matter what you want." "What's the matter?" Seeing that her master was being pulled by someone, the servant girl, who was looking at the local trinkets at a small stall, walked over. The boss couldn't move his eyes away, thinking, where did this woman come from? She's so beautiful in the entire Louis village. "Nothing, let's go." Luocio shook his head. Yui nodded, walking to Luocio's side. The boss was speechless, wasn't he? If there was such a woman beside him, he wouldn't be interested in other women. Fine, a business deal is gone just like that. At this moment, a gorgeously dressed woman came out of the inn. She grabbed the innkeeper's ear and shouted, "You little bastard, are you here to make fun of me? What kind of customer did you invite? You're trying to act all mysterious and frighten me." He ran away. What? Concubine? He ran away? The boss gave a start. The woman pulled the boss's ear hard, saying, "Isn't it? I fell asleep in an instant. I don't know what that guy did to me. He asked me a lot of questions, but I didn't know what I said in a daze. Tell me, did you meet a liar?" The boss said no. They've already paid for it. Saying this, the boss opened his pocket, taking out money while saying, "Look, this huge stack of real grandpa mouse. Oh my God, damn it. I'm sure I saw. How was it red money? It was just a bunch of leaves." The woman said with a sharp voice. I said, "That guy must be pretending to be a ghost. I don't know if he used some kind of bewitching potion or something. I'm still in a daze, and my mind is still very uncomfortable. You little bastard, you must have been tricked." "No way." The boss quickly said, "Concubine, did he do anything to you? What did he ask?" "I forgot. I seem to have said something about the old immortal Huang in the village." The woman pinched her forehead. "What? You said that?" The middle-aged boss suddenly stopped talking. He saw that the young man and his female companion hadn't left yet. They were watching the two of them chatting. He immediately lowered his head and pushed the Annie into the hotel, closing the door behind them. Luaccio took a step back and looked at the hotel again. Then he turned around and looked at the hawkers on the long street thoughtfully. He suddenly walked in front of a small stall and looked at it curiously. "Young man, do you want to buy an embroidered ball? Buy an embroidered ball and give it to a girl you like. You will get a happy marriage." An old woman was sitting in the stall, weaving new embroidered balls. Luaccio squatted down and curiously picked one up. He asked, "Auntie, how much is the embroidered ball?" "The small one is 5 yuan, and the big one is 12 yuan. It's very cheap. I want a small one." Luaccio smiled and said, "By the way, old lady, I want to ask you something." "Here." "Oh, okay, go ahead." Seeing that the deal was done, the old woman agreed with a smile. Luaccio said, "Do you know the old immortal Huang?" Unexpectedly, the old woman's face changed as soon as she heard the name. She didn't say anything. Instead, she grabbed the embroidered ball from Luaccio's hand and said, "I don't want to do business with you. You go, you go." "Old lady." However, the old woman quickly tidied up the stall and walked into the alley with her head lowered. Before she left, she looked back and nervously glanced at the alley. "Master?" Luaccio muttered, "Go and inquire about the old immortal Huang." Chapter 221. Genius remembers love in 1 second/small. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. Ren Xiling and Li Zi said that they were going out for a walk, but they didn't leave the clinic directly. Instead, they quietly came to the doctor's room. Sub-editor Run had a very sensitive professional sense. From Louis Yun's words, she felt that the people of Louis Village seemed to avoid the death of her grandma very much. Even a child born and raised here for 17 or 18 years couldn't find out about this, so it was naturally difficult for her to find out about it in a short period of time. Moreover, a closed village like this that had just been developed not long ago probably still had a lot of customs. If the people of Louis Village were afraid of this matter, then she should ask an open-minded person who was easy to get in touch with. The doctor of the clinic studied Western medicine when he was young. Then, Ren Xiling had reason to believe that the doctor of the clinic was open-minded and believed in science. So, there shouldn't be any taboo matter. How did Louis Hai's mother die? The doctor of the clinic. Louis Chaosheng was very surprised by the woman who called herself a reporter. Louis Chaosheng frowned. "Miss, why do you ask this? She's dead. You don't need to do that if you want to get something from her. Aren't you afraid of losing your virtue by disrespecting the dead?" Ren Xiling said indifferently, "Dr. Louis, you study Western medicine. Do you believe in this kind of nonsense?" Louis Chaosheng shook his head. "Virtue is just an excuse. I mean, it's a matter of morality." "However," Ren Xiling said, "then is it moral for you to hide the truth from a little girl and not let her know about the death of her loved ones?" Louis Chaosheng said thoughtfully, "It's the girl Yun who asked you to ask, right?" Ren Xiling nodded. "Dr. Louis seems to be a sensible person." Louis Chaosheng sighed. "Actually, you're not the first one who asked me for help. There were a few times when that girl secretly asked me about it. He shook his head. That kid has just finished the college entrance examination. Well, she's grown up now. Indeed, she has the right to know what happened that year. Louis Chaosheng took a deep breath. All right, I'll tell you. But please calm down and look at this matter. After all, it's something from the past. Louis Chaosheng walked to the cabinet at the side, squatting down to open the bottom drawer. He seemed to take out something wrapped in newspaper. He slowly opened the box in front of Ren Xiling and sighed. Speaking of which, it was 45 years ago. Ren Xiling's eyes lit up. She knew that her attack had hit the mark. This was the remains of a burned building. The charred wood had decayed and become nutrients for the growth of plants. The collapsed mud bricks were scattered all over the place, making the place unrecognizable. However, judging from the traces of their frames, this building was probably considered luxurious a few decades ago. Luochio picked up a mud brick covered with moss from the ground. Yi said softly to her master, I heard that after the old immortal Huang was taken away by the guards, this place was burned down by the guards. Well, Luochio threw the mud brick away, patting the mud dust on his hands. He walked into the burned site, saying, the woman who was sacrificed should be Louis Hai's father's wife. Yi nodded. I heard that she was a woman of unknown origin. Louis village doesn't allow outsiders to marry. I think that old immortal probably saw this point, so she used this kind of method that was almost the same. Luochio paused, asking curiously, since Louis village doesn't welcome outsiders, why did the old immortal Huang? Yi seemed to have expected her master to ask such a question. She replied softly, it's like this. The old immortal Huang came from Louis village. Her surname was Louis. Then one day, she changed her surname to Huang. It was said that an immortal told her in a dream that she was actually an immortal's child in her previous life. Because she violated the heavenly law, she was brought down to the mortal world. She could only go back to heaven after passing the tribulation. Later on, there were some little tricks and such. Luochio nodded. At this moment, his eyes suddenly turned to a position. That was a wall that hadn't completely fallen down. You look at the wall, asking in a low voice, who's hiding there? A small cluster of black flame quietly emerged from Mississippi Maid's fingertip. However, at this moment, a voice came from behind the wall. Senior, don't panic, it's me. A face popped out from behind the wall. It was Momo, the current successor of Celestial Master Taoist of Longhu Mountain. Luochio gave a start. He said subconsciously, oh, in that hotel, the one who looked for, well, it's you. Momo was going to jump out, but his face fell when he heard that. He hurriedly waved his hands and said, Senior, listen to my explanation. It's not what you think. Momo was extremely distressed. If this matter were to spread to the world of cultivators in the divine land, and to his master, who was still cultivating in seclusion on the mountain, his reputation as the successor of the celestial master of Longhu Mountain would be ruined. Seeing that Luochio didn't have much reaction, Momo shrugged his head, almost howling, It's not what you think. Is this family a clown? Boss Luo thought. He shook his head and said, It's okay. Even if you have a special hobby, I'm not interested to know. And I'm not interested in telling anyone. It's not what you think, Senior. If Momo was in awe of this senior who he couldn't see through, then he felt like his Tao heart would shatter at any moment for this woman he met for the first time. But this woman seemed to follow this senior's orders. Like a servant, Momo couldn't figure out this senior's background. Perhaps he was an old guy who could retain his youthful look? Although he had heard from his master that this was not as good as the ancient times, and many sects had been annihilated in the long river of history, and many strange skills have been lost. However, the divine land was vast and rich in resources. It was not impossible that there were cultivators with good inheritances. Momo, who still wanted to have a good competition with this senior to prove her ability, temporarily suppressed the thought in her heart. Senior, you're also here to investigate this old witch, right? Since I can't explain, then, I'll change the topic, okay? I'm curious. Luochio nodded. Momo revealed a smile before jumping out of the wall. I think so, too. To tell you the truth, I was just thinking that if it were you, Senior, you would probably find this place very quickly as well. Looking at Momo, who arrived earlier than him, Luo Chio asked, "Did you find something?" Momo chuckled and said, "Yes, I came early, but I did find some things. Senior, please follow me." Momo led the two to the wall that hadn't completely collapsed, looking at an empty space that should have been cleaned by Momo not long ago. Momo chuckled. "I heard that this place was smashed by the guards and everything was taken away, but there seems to be something buried underground that hasn't been discovered yet." Luochio didn't ask how Momo found that, but just watched Momo's next move quietly. Momo grabbed his right wrist with his left hand, forming a sword with his right forefinger and middle finger, and then pointed between his eyebrows. A golden light flashed on his fingertip. Then Momo pointed at the empty space in front of him. 5 ghosts transport. Dragon Tiger Mountain seemed to have a way to raise ghost servants to catch ghosts and subdue monsters. The so-called 5 ghosts. Luochio didn't see 5 ghosts, but a cloud of black fog came out from a cloth bag on Momo's waist and then disappeared into the mud. Not long after, something slowly swelled up from the mud and drilled out. It was a box. Momo waved his finger again, and the lock of the box popped open automatically. After the black fog coiled around the chest, it opened the chest. Although it couldn't be compared with Luochio's ability, it was quite convenient. The cloud of black fog circled in the air, and then went into the cloth bag on Momo's waist. Momo raised his eyebrows in front of Luochio with a complacent look, like a kid showing off. Luochio didn't care about Momo's complacency, but just frowned. He saw a piece of cloth after the box was opened, and the pattern on the cloth was a red circle on a white background. This might be the most common flag of an island country. Momo also noticed this cloth, frowning. What's wrong with this old wish? Why is there such a thing in the box? There's something under it. Luochio said, "Let's see what it is." "Miss." Maid understood, walking to the front of the box and lifted the cloth. There were dozens of crisscrossing grids in the box. Among these grids, only one of the grids on the top row was empty. In the rest of the grids, there were test tubes placed one after another. Yi took out one of the test tubes with interest and put it under the sun to examine it. Chapter 222. Genius Remembers Love in 1 Second / Little. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. Ah! Lizzie let out a low cry of horror and immediately covered her mouth with her hand. But Ren Xiling didn't blame her, because after hearing Louis Chaoxing's narration of what happened that year, she couldn't hold back the horror in her heart, even feeling a chill on her back. A village of people ganged up and brought an innocent woman to the cliff. Ignoring the woman's painful pleas, they threw her down the cliff. Not only was this cruel, but there was also a kind of human heart that made people feel more and more terrified the more they thought about it. Ren Xiling sighed and said, "Ignorance has always been a terrible thing." She even smiled bitterly. "I understand why Dr. Louis didn't want to tell you. This kind of thing, if a little girl knows it, it's indeed." Louis Chaoxing also sighed. "This thing has always been a taboo in this village." Then, after more than 10 years, the flames of the Four Olds movement from the outside burned here. However, no one mentioned that thing. Everyone followed the rules and pretended that it didn't happen. Who is willing to think about that kind of thing? Who is willing to be responsible for that thing? The culprit who instigated the crowd had been arrested, and her house had been burned to the ground. They thought that their evil had been burned away along with the fire. Ren Xiling heaved a sigh. No wonder Louis Hai moved his house to such a remote place. I'm afraid that everyone in the village is his enemy. Thinking of Louis Hai's agitated expression on the Hear the Sea cliff, Ren Xiling began to imagine what terrible things Louis Hai had experienced 45 years ago when he was still a little kid. Louis Chaoxing's consulting room became silent at once. Lizzie picked up the things that Louis Chaoxing showed them. These were the appearances of the villagers after they were infected with the strange disease. It was not a photo, but something that Louis Chaoxing drew from his memory. Lizzie looked at the densely grown things on the patient's hands and feet. She couldn't help but feel creeped out. Is this really the devil's curse? Louis Chaoxing shook his head. Part of the reason why I decided to study medicine was to find out what this disease is. Because I don't believe in curses. Have you found the reason? Ren Xiling asked curiously. Louis Chaosheng looked uncertain. For so many years, I've never encountered such an illness. However, in recent years, the internet has developed. A lot of information can be transmitted in time. I have seen some reports about this case on the internet. Louis Chaosheng turned the old computer screen on his desk around. After it disappeared, he found the web page and opened it, saying slowly, "There are not many cases of this disease in the world. There are only about 10 or 20 cases in total. There is no clear definition in the medical field. Currently, it was temporarily called mop hand. It meant that after the patient's hands and feet mutated, a large number of keratinocytes grew out and became like a mop that mopped the floor. It should be a disease caused by cell mutation." "Well, I've seen the report about this before." Rin Xiling nodded. She looked at the patient's photo on the web page and compared it with the portrait that Louis Chaosheng drew from his memory. It was indeed very similar. This disease caused the patient's hands and feet to mutate, looking like a mop or a coral stone at the bottom of the sea. No one knew whether it would eventually grow out of the whole body. But it was really too scary for the people at that time. The old immortal Huang in the village misled the people with her lies, and the villagers believed it. Louis Chaosheng shook his head. "I've hidden this matter for many years. I was going to tell Evian when she asked me again." Rin Xiling kept silent for a while. "Doctor, can I accept these pictures?" Louis Chaosheng thought for a while. "Take it if you want. Anyway, it's useless now." Rin Xiling said while packing up, "Thank you, doctor. Then, we won't disturb your work. Lizzie, let's go." Watching them leave, Louis Chaosheng heaved a long sigh of relief. He leaned against the chair and lit a cigarette silently. Then, he closed his eyes and thought about something. Perhaps it was something that happened a long time ago. It's like some chemicals. Yi shook the test tube in her hand, looking at Luo Qiu. "As for what ingredients are in it and what effect it will bring, we can only know after testing it." Momo frowned. "Senior, have you heard about the evil things that those Japanese did before the war?" Luo Qiu glanced at Momo. "You're thinking that the strange disease that happened in Louis village was caused by the things in this box?" Momo nodded. "Isn't there an empty space here? And it's buried so deep in the ground. If I didn't know the 5 ghosts transfer skill, I'm afraid I couldn't find it. That old witch was so anxious to throw the sick people into the sea because she was afraid that this thing would be contagious. But it's hard for her to explain." Momo frowned. "Think about it. If that old witch really used the stuff inside to make people sick, she would be the one who made them sick. As long as she didn't continue to use it, all the patients would die. Then Louis village would return to its original state, wouldn't it? In this way, the matter of sacrificing people and the fact that no one in the village would be infected could be linked together to show the magic of the old witch. Wouldn't it be convincing?" Luochio suddenly asked. "If it's really like what you said, what are you going to do?" Momo said as a matter of course. "Of course I'll make it public. That old witch was taken away by the guards. Of course she didn't have a good ending. However, there were people in the village who participated in the murder, and every one of them was equivalent to an accomplice. This kind of disregard for human life, how could he just say that he was instigated? Then we'll act as if nothing had happened? That's ridiculous." Feeling the strong sense of justice in Momo's heart, Luochio appreciated it. "Since you want to make it public, how do you want to do it?" "Well," Momo gave a start. He hadn't considered this aspect. Luochio said indifferently, "You found this thing. Just take me as your witness. But I'm just an outsider to Louis village. You just found this box and made a conjecture. How many people do you think will believe that this is the cause of that incident?" Momo's face turned gloomy at once. Luochio sighed. When the woman surnamed Huang was taken away, her trick might have been exposed. After so many years, how could no one in the village not think about that? But they didn't want to talk about it, didn't they? Momo looked at the box in silence, feeling extremely embarrassed. Luochio said lightly, "It's not that they don't know, they just don't want to admit it." Momo said angrily, "This guy, how could he do that?" Luochio turned around. The burnt house was on higher ground. He could see more than half of Louis village if he looked around. He said slowly, "Maybe it's because it's not just one person." Chapter 223. Genius 1. Second, remember, love, divided by go divided by little? I'll provide you with wonderful novels to read. Momo didn't know what he should do. Love, go, little, say W. Chew these things had already surpassed all the things he had dealt with and all the things he had dealt with. He was the successor of the Taoism of Dragon Tiger Mountain. He learned a lot of skills at a young age. He exorcised ghosts, killed demons, and beheaded devils. But he had never corrected people's hearts. Luocchio's words were too heavy for him. Momo, who had the dream of Jianghu, found that he was too young when he wanted to do something. But he was still the successor of the Taoism of Dragon Tiger Mountain. He still remembered that his duty was to exorcise demons and beasts. But he carefully hid the things that happened 45 years ago in his heart. Because he knew that one day, when he was more mature, he would have the ability to deal with such things. This history was too dirty. Momo even felt that it was dirtier than the demons and ghosts he had exorcised. Momo looked at Luocchio, overlooking most of Louis village with him. He dyed his hair blonde and had a Kylan tattoo on his arm. He didn't look like a gangster, but a scholar. Slowly, he said, "My master once told me this. He said, the coldest thing is the human heart." At this moment, Luocchio didn't say anything. He just stood there and imagined the old celestial master on Mount Longhu saying such words. Would his heart turn cold? Momo chose to leave. He came for the legend of the sea demon. Since the legend was made up by an old witch back then, his only goal was now. That was the strange song that could make people forget and lose their souls. Because it was true. After leaving, Momo started to think of one thing. He forgot to take away or destroy the box that was dug out from the ground. He didn't even know if this senior was a good person or a bad person. He went back to the original place, but the person was gone. So was the box. Momo looked at the burnt ruins with a distressed expression. Suddenly, he had a feeling of being at a loss. He still didn't know who this senior was, and he didn't even know his name. The successor of the celestial master sect of Mount Longhu muttered to himself, "Could it be a gossipy person? It's better if you don't go around spouting nonsense." That was what happened in the hotel. That was the dark history of this young celestial master. Luocchio met Rinziling and Lizzie in the village. She listened to them talk about what happened later and what they heard from Louis Chaosheng. Looking at Louis Chaosheng's drawing in Lizzie's hand, Luocchio, who was particularly interested in strange things, said subconsciously, "It looks like mop cloth hand." Lizzie hadn't said anything yet, but the other party had already said it out loud. She felt that Sister Rensun was not simple at all. Of course, Yi, who was his girlfriend, wasn't that simple. It was just that she, who had always been optimistic, didn't think too much about it. Looking at Luoccio's behavior along the way, she knew that this person was almost spoiling Sister Run to the extent of. In fact, it should be reversed. The son should be the mother, right? Run Xiling nodded. "I've finished what the little girl asked me to do, but I don't know what to say now." Luocchio suddenly asked, "Where are you going?" Rin Xiling said casually, "I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to walk around and relax. I want to see if there is anything special." "Hey, Lizzie, don't you notice that there is a string of shell wind chimes under the eaves of almost every house here?" Lizzie thought, "Maybe it's the custom here? Aren't there things like 8 trigrams and bronze mirrors hanging in front of many houses?" Rin Xiling said, "That's for exorcism. But can the wind chimes made of shells exorcise evil spirits?" Lizzie shrugged and said, "I don't know about that. Do you want to ask someone?" Rin Xiling wanted to agree, but someone rushed over. It was Louis Yun, who was supposed to take care of Louis Hai in the clinic. The little girl ran a little hurriedly and panted. She had a panicked expression on her face. "Big Sister Ren, have you seen my father?" Rin Xiling frowned. "What happened?" The little girl was about to cry. "I just walked away, but my father disappeared when I returned to the ward. I asked the doctor, but he said he didn't see him. What should I do? My father is still having a high fever." Lizzie comforted her at once. "It's okay. Maybe he just woke up and didn't want to stay in the clinic. Maybe he went home." But Rin Xiling said, "How about this? This village is not that big. If you want to find someone, you can find him very quickly if he is not hiding deliberately. Let's look for him separately." Okay. The little girl nodded at once. Luochio said. Then let's look for him here. Luochio pointed to a direction. Ren Xiling nodded, then went to another direction with Lizzie and Louis Yun. Seeing that Ren Xiling and the other two had disappeared into the crowd, Luochio didn't look for them in that direction. He looked at the location of the small clinic and walked towards it. Looking for people was not a difficult task for the club's boss. Louis Hai didn't go missing. According to the information, he was still in the clinic. In the clinic, Louis Chaosheng was treating the villagers. This clinic was the only place where people could see patients, so it wouldn't be idle all the time. When Luochio and Yu Yi walked past the clinic, Louis Chaosheng was listening to a child with a stethoscope. Louis Chaosheng acted as if he didn't see the two who walked in. Even the child and his parents didn't notice it. Luochio just glanced at them, then walked towards the room inside the clinic. It was Louis Chaosheng's office. The door didn't close, but opened slightly. At this moment, no one noticed that the door had slowly opened a little more. The office wasn't big and could be seen at a glance. At this time, Luochio walked to an iron cabinet near the wall. Miss Maid, who was used to following her master's eyes, reached out her hand, pressing on the lock of the iron cabinet. Crack! The door of the iron cabinet opened slowly. All the mezzanine inside the iron cabinet was taken away, becoming a very spacious space. At this moment, Louis Hai was in this cabinet. Louis Hai was still in a coma, but there was an infusion tube on the back of his hand, and an infusion bag was hanging above the cabinet. There weren't enough hospital beds, so they could only bring him here for infusion. Of course, it was impossible. Chapter 224. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 second/small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Now that they found Louis Hai, Yi asked directly, Master, do we need to inform Miss Ren? However, Luochio closed the door of the iron cabinet. He said, if Louis Chaosheng intended to do something to Louis Hai, he wouldn't put up an infusion bag and let him continue the infusion. Yi nodded. She also agreed with this statement. Luochio circled around the office, looking at those places that were cleaned up by Louis Chaosheng. Even the old-fashioned computer, although the shell was yellowed, there was not much dust on it. Even the keyboard seemed to have been cleaned regularly. The words on the keys had already become unclear, and some places had even been directly rubbed away. However, it was difficult to see some dust between the cracks of the keyboard. The small keyboard was so were the other things. When he came in, Luochio had a feeling that Louis Chaosheng was at least serious about his work. Luochio walked to Louis Chaosheng's chair and sat down. Leaning against the back, he gazed at the door of the office. He liked it this way, looking at other people's views from other people's perspectives. He looked at Yu Yi and said with a smile, this is a sincere and serious person. As for the purpose of hiding Louis Hai, we might as well observe it. Yu Yi smiled faintly. She only wanted her master to be happy. Miss Maid also walked around the office casually and stopped in front of another iron cabinet. This cabinet should be used by Louis Chaosheng to store documents and cases. Even ordinary people couldn't guard against locks, let alone Miss Maid from the club. Pulling open the locked drawer at the bottom of the cabinet, he saw a stack of documents neatly arranged in a cowhide envelope. Yu Ye's fingers danced across the documents and suddenly stopped. She pulled out one of the documents and opened it. Soon after, a smile appeared on the servant girl's face. She looked at Luochio and said softly, Master, there are some interesting things here. Louis Hai? I didn't see him. Let's go. Another one he didn't see. On the way, Ren Xiling felt that the villagers didn't really like Louis Hai. If she didn't know what happened 45 years ago, Ren Xiling might think that Louis Hai's family had done something terrible. But now, she couldn't help but feel the atmosphere of this village from the bottom of her heart. She shook her head and even sighed, walking to Louis Yun's side. At this moment, the little girl also turned off the phone. She shook her head and said with a disappointed expression, My mom said that she hasn't seen my dad go back yet. Ren Xiling frowned and said, We're all from the same village. Your father is so conspicuous, yet no one noticed him. Maybe he didn't walk this way. Love, go little say, let's wait and see if Luochio has found anything. Don't worry, your father is an adult. He won't do anything stupid. The little girl could only nod. She looked so weak that it made people's heart ache. Rin Xiling thought of Louis Yun's request. She hesitated for a while and decided to wait until they found Louis Hai. Louis Yun took a deep breath. Sister Rin, let's go there. We didn't find him just now. Okay. Rin Xiling nodded. Lizzie suddenly asked, what happened in front? Why are people running in that direction all of a sudden? This was not the main street of the village, but the back of the street where people lived. Is it Dad? Louis Yun looked anxious, walking over quickly. Rin Xiling and Lizzie followed her. They soon squeezed into the crowd. It was the entrance of a house. When they saw the scene in front of them, they understood why there were so many people gathered here. The little girl, Louis Yun, even let out a scream directly. Even though sub-editor Ren had seen a lot of things, she still had a creepy feeling. It was a man in his 50s or 60s who should be a member of this family. He just fell down in front of the door at this time. The door of this house was open, and the man was lying on the threshold. He seemed to be crawling out of the house. Both of his hands and feet were covered with dense gray branches, like the roots of an old tree, like the corals at the bottom of the sea, like the symptoms of the patients in the portraits that Louis Chaosheng gave them. The man was foaming at the mouth, his face was gray, and his eyes were closed. His appearance was so horrible that no one dared to check whether he was breathing or not. A child squeezed into the crowd at this moment. After taking a look, he was so scared that his face turned green. In an instant, he was so scared that he started crying. The child's mother hurriedly covered his eyes, turning him around. She said in panic, "Don't look, don't look. This is... I remember. An old woman screamed at this moment. Her legs went soft, and her whole body collapsed to the ground. However, the old woman's feet were still kicking on the ground, constantly moving her body backwards. The old woman extended a trembling finger. Her voice trembled as she said, "Curse. Curse. It's a curse. That curse is back. It's back." Some of the young people who lived nearby were very young. At this moment, they were frightened to the point of panic. They swallowed their saliva and asked, "Granny Guayu, what curse?" The old woman trembled. "I don't know. I don't know anything. It's none of my business, none of my business. So many people died, so many people. It's none of my business. It's none of my business." The old woman crawled out of the crowd, touching the wall of the alley and leaving in a panic. She kept muttering, "So many people died, so many people. It's none of my business, none of my business. I don't know anything. Don't come to me, don't come to me." Not only the old woman. Almost at the same time, several old people at the scene also hid in a panic without saying a word. Some hid in their own homes, while others fled into the nearby alleys that extended in all directions. Only some young people were left, and they were so scared that they didn't know what to do. Ren Xiling frowned at this moment. "What are you waiting for? Send him to the clinic. You can send him. This guy is so horrible. Who knows if it's contagious?" Ren Xiling suddenly raised the third finger on her right hand, ignoring the young people's ugly expressions. "Lizzie, come and help me. Yun, call Dr. Liu and tell him that the disease that year appeared again." "Oh, okay." The frightened girl took out the phone in a panic. Ren Xiling tore the sleeve of her clothes with her teeth and then wrapped it around her palm. Seeing this, Lizzie also tore her sleeves to wrap her hands. The two of them worked together to pull the person up. He's still breathing. Chapter 225. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, Go/Small. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Those who are not in charge, please leave. Sorry to trouble you. The only person who worked in the clinic was a woman in her 30s, wearing a nurse uniform. She was dismissing the villagers who gathered in front of the clinic. The news about the sick old man soon spread in this small village. More and more people knew about it. Louis Chaosheng ignored the hustle and bustle outside the clinic, but in the consulting room, he looked very serious. He had received Louis Yun's call early, so he prepared all the tools in his hand and waited for the treatment. Ren Xiling and Lizzie were watching at the side. They got some alcohol from Louis Chaosheng, wiping their hands and the skin that they might have touched. "How is it?" What's the disease? Ren Xiling asked seriously. Is it? Louis Chaosheng said seriously. It's very similar to what I saw in the past. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's exactly the same. But I was too young at that time, so my memory might be wrong. So I'm not 100% sure. But, looking at the two brave people who sent the old man here, Louis Chaosheng said quickly, the conditions here are really limited. If you want to figure out what it is, you have to send him to a better hospital in the town, or even a bigger hospital further away. Ren Xiling remembered that she only saw a lady's motorcycle in front of the clinic, so she volunteered, Dr. Louis, I can help to send him to the town. Louis Chaosheng nodded. Then, let's not delay any longer. Let's go now. Just then, some noises came from outside the consulting room. A middle-aged man in his 40s, wearing a white shirt and trousers, walked in hurriedly with two other men. Doctor, they said they want to come in and have a look. The nurse said awkwardly. Louis Chaosheng shook his head, waving his hand to let the nurse pacify the patients in the clinic. Then he looked at the leading man, squeezing out an ugly smile. Secretary, village head, why are you here? This man's surname was Wu, full name Wu Qiushui. He was the secretary of the village committee from the town. As for the one beside him who was about the same age, he was the head of Louis Village. The other one was the assistant of the secretary of the village committee, also an outsider. He was a college student from the town, surnamed Du Wu Qiushui said, Oh, it's like this. It was said that there was an old man in the village who had contracted a horrible disease and looked very scary. I was worried that the disease might be contagious, so I came here immediately to find out more about it. On the other hand, he also wanted to know more about the patient's family situation and see if there was anything he could do to help. These two are. I don't think I've seen them before. Wu Qiushui glanced at Ren Xiling and Lizi and narrowed her eyes. Louis Chaosheng said, These two ladies sent him here. They're here for a vacation. Wu Qiushui nodded, saying politely, Two kind-hearted people, thank you. Don't mention it. It's more important to save the patient. Ren Xiling said indifferently. Louis Chaosheng hurriedly said, Secretary, village head, I don't know the cause of the patient's illness. The equipment here is limited, so I can't detect it. I'm going to send him to the hospital in the town. At this moment, Wu Qiushui and village chief Lu looked at the patient on the bed. Both of their faces showed a horrified expression. They were startled by this strange situation. Wu Qiushui took a deep breath. Yes. But we don't need to bother these two ladies. Dr. Louis, I'll let little Du drive you out. Okay, as soon as possible. Louis Chaosheng didn't intend to be polite, nodding directly. How is it? Have you found him? After a while, Ren Xiling met Luoqiu again in the small clinic. Boss Luo took Miss Maid out of Louis Chaosheng's office and strolled around outside before coming back. Luoqiu shook his head, saying nothing. Yi asked softly, Miss Ren, why are there so many people here? Don't be so polite. Just call me Sister Ren. You can call me Mom if you feel embarrassed. Luoqiu was startled by Ren Xiling's words, as if she saw a celestial being. What the hell did she mean by calling her Mom if she felt embarrassed, Sister Ren? Yi called her naturally and gracefully. However, sub-editor Ren was already satisfied at this moment. She felt that the distance between her and her daughter-in-law had been shortened a lot. Therefore, she told the whole story in a happy mood. While listening, Luoqiu sized up the little girl Louis Yun, who was sitting aside silently. The little girl lowered her head, looking preoccupied. She seemed to be worried about her father Louis Hai, who disappeared suddenly. Louis Yun raised her head as if she felt someone was looking at her. She quickly wiped her eyes and met Luoqiu's eyes. Luoqiu smiled faintly, shaking his head. The little girl gave a start, not understanding his meaning. Noticing Louis Yun's expression, Ren Xiling said, How about this? We'll go out and look for him for a while. If we can't find him, we'll go back to the resort first. It seemed to be the only way. However, when they walked out of the small clinic, they saw a car parked at the same time. Louis Chaosheng and his assistant little Du carried the sick old man out of the car. Aren't they sending him out? Why did they come back? Lizi couldn't help asking. The young village official frowned. The way out was blocked. The car couldn't get through. What? Ren Xiling gave a start. Little Do nodded. There was a landslide. It'll take some time to clean it up. There was a rainstorm last night. Not sure if it's the reason. Is there any other way out? Luaccio asked suddenly. Little Do glanced at Luaccio, shaking his head no. This road was also built a few years ago to develop the tourism industry. The rest are mountain roads. Even motorcycles can't get out, let alone cars. I've discussed with Dr. Louis, asking people with small sampans to detour. We'll see if we can get a car to pick him up. Little Do explained quickly, looking at Louis Chaosheng. Doctor, you stay here to take care of the patient. I'll contact the boatman. The young village official was very efficient in his work. He had a serious and responsible attitude. Soon, he was already far away. How could it be so coincidental? Run Xiling frowned. On the way here, I've seen the project by the cliff of the highway. The anti-landslide measures are pretty good. How could the landslide happen so suddenly? Lizzie, was the storm last night really strong? Lizzie shrugged. I was sleeping so hard, I don't know, but it shouldn't be very strong. Otherwise, Louis High would have been blown away after staying on the Hear the Sea cliff for one night. Ren Xiling touched Lizzie with her elbow. Lizzie stuck out her tongue, forgetting that Louis High's girl was here. I'm fine. Sister Lizzie, the girl shook her head. Ren Xiling looked at Luaccio. Boy, what do you think? Luaccio said, that Little Do should be back soon. Ren Xiling gaped. What do you mean? Luaccio said indifferently. I said he couldn't find a boat, so he could only come back. Why couldn't he find a boat? Wasn't this a fishing village? Lizzie was confused. Even if they don't make a living by fishing, it shouldn't be like this. Luaccio said, I didn't say they didn't have a boat, but they probably couldn't sail. If the road is blocked, the sea route will be blocked too. Lizzie was stunned. Run Xiling frowned. You mean if it's not a coincidence? Didn't you start to doubt it when you heard the road was blocked? Luaccio asked back. After a while, Little Do ran back hurriedly, panting, bad news. All the fishermen's fishing boats can't sail. I don't know what touched their ship, but the bottom of the ship was penetrated, leaving behind many jagged marks, as if it was bitten by something. Hearing the news, Louis Chaosheng stood up and frowned. Chapter 226. Genius 1, Second Remember Love, Little. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. If the sudden landslide on the road was an accident or a coincidence, then even the fishing boat of the fisherman's family was destroyed. Therefore, it was no longer an accident or coincidence. The young village official frowned. Why does it seem to be designed? Louis Chaosheng could only say, let's think of another way. The patient's heartbeat is very weak. I don't know how long he can hold on. We have to send him out as soon as possible. I'll go back and ask the secretary for help. Little Do said hurriedly. That was the only way. Louis Chaosheng nodded. I'll try my best to prescribe some medicine for him. Let's see how long he can hold on. Louis Chaosheng turned to look at Luaccio and others, saying apologetically, I'm sorry, I wanted to find Louis High after finishing my work. I didn't expect such a thing would happen. How about this? You can go back first. I don't have time to entertain you. It's okay. Doctor, you go ahead. Don't worry about us. Ren Xiling said. Louis Chaosheng didn't say anything. He nodded and walked into the consulting room. After discussing for a while, they decided to follow the original plan to find Louis High first. As for sending the patient away, the local village official and secretary would have a better way. Coo! When they walked out the door, they heard a loud sound. Lizzie quickly covered her stomach and revealed an embarrassed expression. She came over and found that it was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She was so busy that she didn't have time to have lunch. Let's find a place to eat first. Luaccio looked at Ren Xiling, saying casually, your stomach is not good. Ren Xiling didn't want Lizzie to feel embarrassed. She also touched her belly. Alas, I'm hungry too. Iyun, let's eat something first, or we can't find him without strength. You don't want to starve before finding him. The little girl could only nod. Originally, they had no obligation to help her. Now that they had to starve, she felt bad. There's a good noodle shop in front. I'll treat you to a meal. Okay. Ren Xiling wasn't a pretentious person, so she agreed directly. If she didn't let this child treat her, she would only feel more guilty. Unexpectedly, Luaccio saw a familiar face in the small tube. Momo. The young celestial master of Mount Longhu must have arrived even earlier. He had already finished a large bowl of noodles and was now slurping down a second bowl. The shop wasn't big, so he could see who the customers were at a glance. Momo was eating while looking at his phone. When he saw the person coming in, the noodles hung in his mouth and slowly fell back into the bowl. Momo quickly wiped off the grease on his face. When he was about to stand up, he saw Luaccio slightly shaking his head. Momo thought, "It seems that this senior doesn't want to talk with me here. He doesn't want to attract attention." That's right. This senior is accompanied by the little girl in the resort last night. But not talking doesn't mean he can't hear something. Momo thought, this may be a good chance to know more about this senior. Therefore, he immediately focused on his ears and activated the Taoist's mystic technique, which improved his hearing. Isn't this the idiot last night? Sub-editor Ren had a good eyesight. Why are you here? Momo. Momo pretended he didn't hear it, continuing to eat noodles. Lizzie put her finger on her lips, saying hurriedly, Sister Ren, don't make trouble. This guy doesn't look like a good guy. Momo. Momo had to add a spoonful of chili sauce into the bowl. Luaccio sat down, but after sitting down, he slightly pushed his feet to move the stool away. The moment the wooden stool's feet rubbed against the floor tiles, a sharp sound was produced. It was like the sound of glass being scraped. Under normal circumstances, such a sound would be ear-piercing. But for this young heavenly master of Mount Longhu, who had used a hearing mystic art, it was no different from facing a thunderclap. A spoonful of chili sauce went into Momo's mouth. At this moment, the sound of explosion in his ears made Momo choke, causing him to cough painfully. His throat seemed to be burning, and his ears seemed to be deafened. The young master from Dragon Tiger Mountain was in an extremely embarrassing situation. After drinking several times of water, his throat felt a little better. Momo glanced at the people at the opposite table, finding two women were lowering their heads, trying to hold back their laughter. Momo sucked in cold air to cool his tongue, glancing at that senior who didn't seem to have done anything, sighing in his heart. This senior is so evil. But he didn't dare to eavesdrop with magic skill. What do you want to eat? This kind of small family-style restaurant didn't have much sense of service, so the lady boss asked casually in front of them. The girl who made the decision seemed to be relieved after seriously ordering some food. It seemed that she had enough money to pay for it. The others who noticed her expression didn't expose her. Rin Xiling even felt that there weren't many kids like her nowadays. It was said that unruly people were easy to be born in poor places, but it was also easy to have such White Lotus-like kids. Hopefully, this child won't be influenced into a different person when he goes out to study. Suddenly, a sound was heard. It seemed to be a rolling sound, very loud and clear. There weren't many people in this small noodle restaurant. Even Luaccio's table only had 4 tables of customers. Now, they were all alarmed by the sound and looked over. This kind of family-run noodle restaurant had 2 floors. The lower floor was for business, and the upper floor was for living. A wooden ladder connected the 2 floors. It turned out that someone had rolled down the stairs from the upper floor. "Oh, Dad, why did you fall down?" The lady boss threw away the things in her hand, hurriedly running over there. But at this moment, the man climbed out with a pale face, saying in horror, "Help me, help me." The old man stretched out his hand, but it was like an old tree root buried deep in the soil, extremely frightening. He struggled to climb out with a pale face, like an evil ghost. The lady boss screamed in fright and fell to the ground in fright. Isn't this? Obviously, Ren Xiling and the others already knew what it was, showing the same expression. Momo at the side also frowned. He recalled the incident that happened in this fishing village more than 40 years ago. At this moment, "Go away, go away, go away." That was the sound of shouting coming from outside the noodle house. It was unusually loud. Outside the street, a young man was carrying an old woman on his back. Perhaps she was the young man's mother. This old woman's hands and feet also had those old tree root-like keratin. "Go away. Don't block the way." The young man tried his best to run towards the small clinic. This was the 3rd patient that the young man carried. Chapter 227. Genius remembers love in 1 second divided by little. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. The street was in a mess, so was the noodle house. The only customer stayed far away. Maybe because the old man looked too horrible. The girl Louis Yun turned her face away, not daring to look at him. What happened? At the same time, an 18 or 19-year-old boy came in with a bag of sundries. Seeing the old man on the ground, the boy was so scared that he dropped the stuff in his hand. It turned out to be some ginger and garlic. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" The boy ran over, looking flustered. The lady boss hurriedly grabbed the big boy and said, "Quick, go to the kitchen and call your dad. Send your grandpa to the doctor." The big boy panicked. After looking at the people around him blankly, he hurriedly ran into the kitchen. Not long after, the owner of the noodle house and his son worked together to send the old man out. The noodle shop was also closed. After the shop's owner closed the shop, she followed them to the small clinic. At the same time, the fourth patient was diagnosed on the street. The village was very small, so the news spread quickly. A weird and uneasy atmosphere could be smelled in the air. On the other side of the street, there were some noises. It was the fifth patient. In one day, no, in half a day, the sixth patient. "Doctor, doctor, you have to save my mother. You have to save her. Doctor, my father is too old. I know he doesn't have many years left, but I don't want him to die like this. Please, get out of the way. Where's the doctor? Chow Sheng, Chow Sheng. For the sake that we grew up together, you have to save him no matter what." The clinic was already crowded when helping the villagers to treat colds or give anti-epidemic injections to children. But now, there were 6 or 7 patients and their family members. Louis Chow Sheng, who only had a nurse as an assistant, was too busy to cope. Not to mention that a group of villagers had gathered at the clinic. It was so crowded. The secretary of the village committee, Wu Qiushui, was alerted by the incident. He brought along his assistant, Little Du, but they couldn't come up with a good plan, so they hurried over. Soon after, the village head of Louis Village also arrived. "Dr. Lu, what's going on? Why are there suddenly—" Wu Qiushui's expression did not look good. He furrowed his eyebrows and said, "Not counting the people here, when I was on my way here, I also met people who were rushing here. How many are there now?" Louis Chaosheng heaved a sigh. "Secretary, I'm also frightened. I don't have a clue now." Wu Qiushui pulled Louis Chaosheng over, asking in a low voice, "Dr. Louis, tell me honestly, is it a disease like the plague? Should these patients be quarantined?" Louis Chaosheng shook his head. "I really can't check the tools here. As for isolation, we don't have the conditions to do so. And if it's a plague, I'm afraid." Wu Qiushui understood Louis Chaosheng's meaning at once. If it was a plague, it might have already spread out since so many people got sick one after another. Even he himself might have been infected, but it hadn't broken out yet. "Well, Secretary, the way out is blocked by a landslide. The fishing boat of the fisherman's family has been damaged by something. We can't go out temporarily. Don't panic, I've contacted the town. The rescue team will come to clean up soon." Wu Qiushui said calmly. Unexpectedly, at this time, an anxious voice was heard. It was a patient's family member. He might have been eavesdropping or just passing by. "What? We can't go out?" The village head of Louis Village said in a low voice, "Come here first. Didn't you hear the secretary say the rescue team will come soon?" The man stepped back, shaking his head. "No, we can't hide this matter from everyone, even if you're the secretary or the village head." Seeing this guy turning around and leaving, the village head and Wu Qiushui's face darkened. They hurriedly shouted, "Come back. Don't talk nonsense. Come back." But they couldn't call him back. Wu Qiushui and the village head looked at each other, knowing that things would be more troublesome later. That guy might cause unnecessary panic. "Everyone, listen up. I just heard that the road out of here is blocked. Even the fisherman's boat can't be driven. Is there anyone from the fisherman's family? Prove it." Outside the clinic, a man suddenly shouted loudly, "Really? I just called home and heard from my dad that our boat can't be driven. All the fishing boats and sampans can't be driven. It's like they've been bitten by something. Wow, it's a curse. It's a curse. Exactly the same as that year. It's a curse again, a curse again. Grandma Shueihua, don't talk nonsense. What curse? It's really a curse. It's true. It's true. I saw it with my own eyes. Ah, it's here again. Another one is coming. Among the crowd, someone pushed the villagers aside in a flurry, pushing the bicycle. An old man was tied to the back seat of the bicycle, with his hands and feet covered with that kind of thing. We're all going to be cursed. We're all going to be cursed. I don't want to stay here. I don't want to stay here. The old woman called Grandma, Shuehua, bumped into the crowd, stumbling a few steps before falling to the ground. But she quickly got up and ran away as if she was fleeing for her life. Everyone looked at each other in astonishment, but no one dared to utter a single word as they watched Grandma Shuehua turn pale with fright and turn to look at the old man who was being pushed into the small clinic. All of a sudden, it was as silent as a mourner for the dead in a cemetery. Outside the crowd, Louis Yun subconsciously grabbed Ren Xiling's arm, showing a trace of panic on her face, saying worriedly, "Sister Run, do you know what the curse is that Grandma Shuehua talked about? And will my dad also fall somewhere? That's why we can't find him." "Don't panic." Ren Xiling took a deep breath. "Listen to me first. Your dad may not be infected, but I do know about the curse. And I also know that the curse is related to the cause of your grandma's death." The little girl was scared out of her wits. Luocho watched Ren Xiling explaining to Louis Yun while frowning. Yu Yi, who was beside him, also narrowed her eyes slightly. Luocho waved his hand secretly, telling Yu Yi not to move for the time being. Then he stepped back quietly, turning into a small alley. The club boss saw the young Taoist Master Momo of Dragon Tiger Mountain here. "What's the matter?" Luocho looked at Momo. This golden-haired Taoist master had been calling him quietly since the beginning. Momo took a deep breath, saying seriously, "Senior, you should have seen clearly those patients who walked into the clinic, right?" Luocho nodded, saying indifferently, and Momo said in a low voice, "These patients are almost the same as those in Louis Village 45 years ago, right?" "That's right." Luocho nodded in agreement. Momo suddenly stepped forward, hiding his right palm behind his back, saying lightly, "But you and I know that the disease 45 years ago wasn't caused by a curse. It was caused by those things found under the old witch's house." Luocho glanced at Momo, shaking his head. "Are you suspecting that I spread the liquid in those test tubes and caused this chaos?" Momo gritted his teeth. "This kind of thing hasn't happened in this village for dozens of years. Only you and I know that the buried thing was unearthed today. But on that day, there were people who were infected one after another. Senior, tell me, how can I not suspect you?" "It's not me." Luocho's answer was so simple that he didn't want to refute it. Momo shouted in a low voice, "How can there be such a coincidence in the world? I thought you were a senior with profound cultivation, but I didn't expect you to do such a heinous thing. I won't let you spread that kind of thing anymore. Today I, Momo, will enforce justice on behalf of God." The young Taoist master spread his hands abruptly. Many yellow talismans shot out from the open suitcase on the ground, entangling around him. Along with some messy popping sounds that sounded like beans being fried, the yellow talisman began to glow with a faint golden light. Chapter 228. Genius 1, Second, Remember Love, Go/Little. Sure, Annette provides you with wonderful novels to read. But Momo had already operated his Xian cultivation to the extreme, like an arrow on a bow. Plus, he had already made up his mind. How could he stop with just a few words? Those yellow talismans were made with special cinnabar from Dragon Tiger Mountain, mixed with the blood essence of fierce beasts in the mountain. It was one of Momo's special skills. He even knew that this young senior in front of him was unfathomable, so he didn't dare to be careless. He planned to go all out from the start. Green water and red clouds surround tigers and dragons. When the dam is formed, dragons and tigers will be seen. Those yellow talismans fell to the ground along with Momo's deep voice. But they didn't disappear. Instead, they turned into ferocious tigers. The tigers were made of golden light. They weren't as big as real tigers, but they were as big as wolves. They clustered around Momo, giving off an unparalleled aura. At this moment, the tigers grabbed the ground with their claws, pressing their bodies down. They bared their teeth, as if they were facing a great enemy. Momo grabbed his left wrist with his right hand, forming a sword seal with 2 fingers of his left hand, pointing between his eyebrows. He was trying to communicate with the tigers formed by the yellow talismans. However, no matter how hard he tried to control them, these golden tigers, which had been obedient to him ever since he learned this Taoist technique, would not budge no matter how hard he tried to communicate with them. Each of these tigers had the beast soul of a real tiger sealed in them. They had spirituality. They were scared. Momo crazily operated the Shin cultivation in his body. His eyes turned into bits of golden light, vigilantly staring at this senior in front of him. He just stood there without any movement. His aura was the same as before. But now, in Momo's eyes, there was something extra. A door. It was a door that was faintly discernible, as if there were countless vengeful spirits floating in it. It was a door that constantly emitted an aura that made people tremble. Momo's face couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. Ever since he saw this strange door, his spirit seemed to be attracted by a huge whirlpool. His 3 souls and 7 spirits seemed to want to leave his body at any time. So you can see, Luocio said softly, "Tell me, what does it look like?" He walked towards Momo. Each time he took a step closer, Momo felt like his soul was being taken away. After 3 steps, Momo spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression suddenly withered. What he spat out was not simple blood, but what was known as blood essence in Taoism. In an instant, his vitality was greatly damaged. Those golden tigers that were summoned disappeared in an instant. They turned back into yellow talismans and returned to his suitcase. Momo clenched his teeth and made a hand seal with his fingers. He waved it in front of him, and a white smoke instantly filled this quiet alley. "Want to escape?" Yuye's voice sounded in the thick smoke. The black flame in Miss Maid's hand drove the smoke away, and Momo's embarrassed figure appeared at the exit of the alley. Unexpectedly, Luocio grabbed Yuye's wrist, pressing it down. He looked at Yuye's angry face, unconsciously smoothing the wrinkles on her eyebrows, saying softly, "Don't mind him. We'll meet again." "Master?" Luocio said, "My feeling in this aspect is getting clearer and clearer recently." Miss Maid beamed with joy. "That's because you've done more and more transactions, and your ability is getting stronger and stronger." Luocio shook his head. "How's it going over there?" Yuyi said, "The villagers are out of control. The secretary and the village head tried to calm them down, but it didn't work. But the number of patients didn't increase. So far, there are 11 people in total. All of them are old people without exception." Luocio nodded. "That's to say, the people from that year." "Should be. Where's Louis Hai? He hasn't woken up yet." Yuyi said softly. "He should have been injected with tranquilizers." Luocio closed his eyes, staying still. Miss Maid stood behind him quietly. Of course, she knew what her master was doing. After a while, Luocio opened his eyes, saying indifferently, "More and more people are panicking, but there's no despair. But there will be soon." Yi said indifferently, "No matter who's behind this, it's different from the old era. Even if the road is blocked, it won't take a long time to open it. So the person behind this." Luocio looked at Yi. She could always respond to him well. So he responded, "We'll make the panic escalate again." When night fell, the number of people who had relapses increased again. Including the patients during the day, there were 35 people who had relapses. In the daytime, they were old people, but in the evening, they were middle-aged, even young ones appeared. Even the village head of Louis Village was included among these patients. The village head himself was also lying in the clinic. At this time, the villagers had already held a private meeting behind Wu Qiushui's back. Some of them were in their prime, while some were in their 60s. They were all highly respected people in the village. 35. One of them kept touching his crutch, showing his uneasiness. If I remember correctly, it's more than that year. There were only a dozen at that time. I've asked Chaosheng. He said it's good for now, but the conditions here are not good enough. But looking at the time of onset, there may be more patients tomorrow. In this old house, the villagers became terrifyingly silent. They didn't know whether they would be one of the patients lying in the clinic tomorrow. It's the curse. That curse. A very old man, whose teeth were about to fall off, screamed at this time. The younger one shouted, "Shut up! What era is it now? Don't talk about the curse. That matter, we all agreed to never mention it again. But we can't get out of the village. We can't escape." The old man insisted. "Do we have to climb up the mountain? How long will it take to get out? We can't. What if we have an attack? Nobody knows whether we'll die or not. Alas, it's been more than 40 years. Why is it still coming? Is there really a sea god? Didn't you hear the guard say that it was an old witch who pretended to be mysterious and deceive people? But those guards themselves couldn't explain why the villagers would fall ill with that kind of illness. Isn't it said that the medical science outside is very advanced? Even Chowsheng learned it outside, but he didn't know what the disease was either. Besides, it was true that everything was fine after the sacrifice, wasn't it? Maybe it's just a coincidence that the old witch met a dead rat. What if it's true? An old man, sitting in the corner, swallowed his saliva. Do you know how to surf the internet? A few days ago, my grandson was surfing the internet, saying that he saw some reports about our village. He said that someone heard a strange song coming from the sea and recorded it. Guess what? What? Yeah, Old Ox, what? Old Ox swallowed his saliva. That song is very strange. My heart kept beating when I heard it. I was in a daze and didn't even know how time passed. When I came back to my senses, I had been sitting there for more than half an hour. It's the same for my grandson. Is it true? Do you think I'm lying to you? Old Ox said unhappily. Strange, really strange. At this time, a young man rushed in hurriedly, saying in panic, "Oh no, Grandpa's, someone got sick again. So many. At the same time, rumble. A deafening sound was heard, which was extremely horrifying in such a dark night. Everyone was startled. They hurriedly ran out of the old house, listening to the rumbling sound. That's the sound from Hear the Sea Cliff. Quick, find someone to check what's going on." After waiting for more than 1 hour, the person who went to inquire came back with a pale face. Hear the Sea Cliff collapsed. Just like 45 years ago. It's over. The sea god is really angry. When I came back, I saw many people rushing to Chowsheng's clinic. The man's face turned pale, saying with a trembling voice, "Some were crawling on the ground. The curse is back. Back." Old Ox screamed, "It's old immortal Huang. It's old immortal Huang." When she was caught, we didn't help her. I remember it very clearly when she was caught. She said she would come back to take revenge on us. She said she would come back. She said we were blaspheming against the gods. She was the daughter of an immortal. She came back. Old Ox, don't scare people here. She came back. Old Ox gasped heavily, opening his eyes widely. Suddenly, he fell on the ground and didn't move anymore. Everyone was scared, hurriedly looking at him. Old Ox had stopped breathing. "Grandpa Bao, what should we do now?" The one who was watching was the oldest one here. He was also the first one to hold a walking stick. He was so old that his teeth were about to fall off. Grandpa Bao said in a low voice, "Tomorrow morning, if more people get sick, we'll do it. Let's try the old method." "What? This is not good. Grandpa Bao, you can't say or do things recklessly. The society is not like before. It's a crime." Grandpa Bao took a deep breath. "It's a crime now, but wasn't a crime before? Do you think the old guards don't know what we've done? They knew, but they couldn't do anything. They couldn't do anything to us. What could they do to us? Catch all of us? No, they didn't dare. If they dared to catch us, we would be in chaos. It's the same now. It's not everyone's fault. Yes, it's not everyone's fault. We have no other way. We can only save ourselves. Yes. If it's good, it means we did the right thing. If it's not good, we don't know if those sick people are contagious. Throwing them away is for the good of our children, isn't it? Yes, it's reasonable. Yes, wait until dawn. But if we do it according to the old method, where can we find them?" Chapter 229. A genius will remember love in 1 second divided by small. Shoa Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. When Momo spat out a mouthful of blood, he recalled what his master told him before he went down the mountain. There's always someone better than you. Be careful. He was a person who respected his master very much. The young Taoist master, who didn't have parents, naturally regarded the old Taoist master as his only relative. But he was young, free, and easy, and sometimes forgetful. He was indeed too impulsive. Momo took a deep breath, trying to adjust the chaos in his body. He almost went crazy just by peeping at the vague influence of the door. It was too shocking for a young man like him. However, what the young heavenly master of Mount Longhu didn't know was that another Taoist who had been roaming the mortal world for 500 years also vomited blood every day when he faced that door. Vomiting and vomiting had almost become a habit. The night passed in Momo's adjustment. The rising sun above the sea level was more punctual than the most precise electronic clock, but it was still dawn. Some people had been working since last night. They were the road-clearing team, organized by some young and strong villagers in Lui Village. Even though Wu Qiushui said he had contacted the town government and the rescue team was on the way, the villagers couldn't wait, because the number of infected people was enough to make the whole Lui Village panic. No, it's okay if it's mud, but most of them are rocks. It's hard to move them without a crane. Little Du, the village official who hadn't slept all night, looked at Wu Qiushui with bloodshot eyes. Apparently, he was extremely tired. Wu Qiushui also knew that it was hard for these villagers to deal with such a large-scale landslide. I don't know how long the patience will last. Wu Qiushui frowned. He did not even know if the patients would die after the rescue team on the other side dug a way out. How about the boat? Wu Qiushui had to ask. Little Du said, the town said to arrange a fishing boat, but it won't be so fast. We can't delay it for even a minute. Wu Qiushui sighed. If we can't, we can only carry the patients there one by one. Wu Qiushui pinched the space between his eyebrows. He was worried and exhausted. Little Du said, Secretary, why don't you rest for a while? I'll take care of things here. At this moment, a young villager hurriedly ran over. Not good. Secretary, bad news. What's going on? Wu Qiushui's heart skipped a beat. Are those patients? At this moment, over 100 people in Lui Village had been infected with the disease. The number increased overnight. Of course, people would feel nervous about it. No, the young villager said. It's Grandpa Bao and the others. All the villagers are heading for Lui Hai's holiday house with a large group of people. Little Du was stunned. What are they going to do? They say they want to catch people to worship the sea god. The young villager said with a pale face. They say it's not a disease, but a curse. It's the punishment of the sea god and the sea to Lui Village. Only by catching people to worship the sea god can we protect our village. Just like what? Say it. Wu Qiushui had been the secretary for many years. He shouted sternly. Just like 45 years ago. Ridiculous. Wu Qiushui goggled his eyes. His voice changed due to anger. These people, unruly people. Take me there. We can't let such a tragedy happen. It'll be terrible if we let this old guy do whatever he wants. Is there any law? The group of people rushed to the resort in the other direction. Before the sun rose, the little girl was already in the kitchen of her holiday home. To Lui Yun's surprise, she met one of the guests of the holiday house in the kitchen at such an early time. So far, he was the only male guest in the restaurant. Luo, Mr. Luo. The girl looked at Luochio, who came in uneasily. She felt that this younger man was not as easy to get along with as Sister Run, as if he didn't know how to smile. Lui Yun could only ask curiously, Why are you here? Are you hungry? In fact, they looked for people in the village for a long time, but didn't have a good meal. Finally, it was too late, so they gave up and came back to the holiday house. After they came back, Ren, Xiling, and Lizzie were so tired that they fell asleep. Then they didn't come out when they ate. Luochio came in, saying calmly, I just want to make some porridge. Do you have any ginger here? Oh, yes. The girl nodded quickly. I also made some porridge, actually. Luochio glanced at the pot, asking suddenly, Is this for your grandpa? Lui Ian nodded. Yes, Grandpa's health and appetite are not good these years, so he can't eat greasy food in the morning. She shook her head, sighing, and suddenly said, I'll cook some porridge for him when I'm free. Luochio said, We didn't sleep last night, right? Louis Yun said, I'm fine, I'm not tired. I'll go out later. Luochio had started to wash the rice. The girl glanced at the porridge that was almost done, and then looked at the rice that Luochio was taking out. She moved her lips, but didn't say anything in the end. I didn't mean you didn't cook well. Luochio shook his head. It's just that someone's stomach is not good, so I know what she can eat. She heard about their relationship from the guests yesterday. The girl gave a start, suddenly remembering that Luochio said the elder sister's stomach was not good. She couldn't help exclaiming, Mr. Luo, you're so nice to your family. Luochio said calmly. Aren't you the same? Louis Yun lowered her head shyly. The kitchen became quiet all of a sudden. The girl stirred the porridge in the pot silently, while Luochio was also doing his own thing silently. Mr. Luo, do you think there will be more patients in the village today? Louis Yun suddenly asked. It's hard to say. Louis Yun said again. How did you diagnose this disease? Luochio stopped, looking at Louis Yun, asking suddenly, Didn't you know what happened yesterday? Then how did you diagnose this disease? Louis Yun gritted her teeth. The girl's eyes seemed to be broken by something. She said in a low voice blankly, I don't know. Luochio nodded. At this time, there was a rapid noise outside the holiday house. It seemed that someone was knocking on the door quickly. At this moment, at least a few different voices could be heard. Luochio looked at that direction, then wiped the water stains on his hands with a rag. He didn't look at the girl, saying, Go and see what happened. Oh, okay. Louis Yun answered subconsciously. At this moment, Luochio directly walked out of the kitchen, right in the sight of the little girl. But he suddenly stopped, seeming to think of something. He tilted his head slightly, but didn't look at her completely. He said, Oh, what are you laughing at? Chapter 230. A Genius Remembers Love in 1 second/small. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Louis Yun touched her face subconsciously, revealing a puzzled expression. I didn't laugh. Is that so? Luochio nodded and said, Maybe I was mistaken. Let's go out. Louis Yun followed him silently, and then followed him out. The banging outside was so loud that Luo Iu, the lady boss who had arranged a room in front of the resort, woke up with a start. She put on her coat impatiently and walked out of the room as if she wanted to scold someone. She happened to meet Louis Yun and Luochio, who just came out of the kitchen. Luo Iu didn't care how these two guys came out of the kitchen. She was busy unlocking the door and said impolitely, I'm coming. Who do you think you are? Are you in a hurry to reincarnate? But when Luo Iu opened the door, she was given a shock. He saw a few people outside the door. They were all old people from the village. Not only that, but there were also 20 to 30 people behind them. These people were holding flashlights in their hands. Each of them even had some tools in their hands. Although they were called tools, they were actually all kinds of farming tools. Hoes, sickles, carrying poles, and so on. Luo Iu was so scared that her face turned pale. She swallowed her saliva and said, Grandpa, a bow. What do you want to do? Seeing that Luo Iu was the one who opened the door, a bow stepped back and waved his hand, saying, It's her. Arrest him. Several villagers in their 50s behind Grandpa Bao gritted their teeth and walked out together after hesitating for a while. They grabbed Luo Iu's hands and dragged her out of the door. They were very rough. Loved go little say Neuka Luo Iu even lost her balance and fell to the ground. But very quickly, someone swiftly tied a rope around her body. Luo Iu struggled in fear and screamed, What are you doing? Let go of me. Let me go. Stuff her mouth. A bow ordered sternly. Immediately, someone stuffed a rag into Luo Iu's mouth. Louis Yun rushed out in horror, shouting angrily, What do you want to do to my mother? Let go of her. Let her go. But several villagers stopped Louis Yun at the same time, making her unable to get close. As a result, the noisy voices had been awakened by the people in the resort. Ren Xiling and Lizi came out first, followed by Yu Yi. Ren Xiling saw the situation outside from the door and frowned. She walked out without thinking, but was stopped by Luochio. Luochio grabbed Ren Xiling's arm and gently pulled her back. Luochio, what are you doing? Let go of me first. Ren Xiling's tone suddenly became heavier, but she also lowered her voice. She always believed that Luocio wouldn't stop her for no reason. Luocio shook his head. This is not your place. AI, go, shout, say, W. Chew. Ren Xiling frowned and soon figured out the seriousness of matter. However, her natural sense of justice made her unable to allow herself to be confused like this. Seeing those people about to take Luo Iu away, Ren Xiling couldn't help asking loudly, "What are you going to do? Where are you going to take her?" A Bao glanced at Luocio's group, saying indifferently, "Who are you? I've never seen you in Louis Village." "We're tourists," A Bao said. "Since you're tourists, it's none of your business. You'd better stay away from the affairs of Louis Village. Stay here obediently, eat what you want to eat, and play what you want to play." "Hey you, how can you say that?" A Bao ignored her, waving his hand, saying loudly, "Let's go." "Wait, are you going to take the child's mother away without considering her feelings?" Ren Xiling said angrily, "We are outsiders. Is the child an outsider too?" A Bao glanced at Louis Yun, who was pushed to the ground, saying coldly, "Anyway, she's not the child's mother. Her mother died of dystocia when she gave birth to her. She's Louis Hai's concubine." "What?" Louis Yun raised her head inconceivably. Ren Xiling and Li Zi were also astonished. I'll fight with you." Suddenly, an indignant voice came from the room. That was Louis Yun's grandfather, Louis Hai's father, Louis Buhai, who became a fool in his old age. Louis Buhai's face was ferocious, rushing out with a carrying pole in his hands, waving it wildly, shouting excitedly, "Let her go! Let her go! Let my wife go! Let Shui-er go! Let her go!" "Grandpa!" But the old Louis Buhai was easily pressed to the ground by several villagers. Louis Buhai was still waving his legs, shouting, "Let me go! Let me go! Bastards! You're all bastards! Let my wife go! Let her go!" "Louis Buhai, you're old and confused. Your wife died long ago." "She's not." A Bao snorted, waving his hand. "Let's go. Go to hear the sea cliff." Louis Buhai couldn't stand up after being pressed to the ground. He blankly watched the villagers leave. Then he sat on the ground like a child and cried bitterly, "Don't go! Don't go! Give my wife back to me! Give her back to me!" The little girl ran to Louis Buhai, hugging her grandpa. Her eyes were full of tears, and she didn't know what to do. What's happening here?" A voice came at this time. They were Wu Qiushui and Little Du, who had rushed over. There were also two other villagers. He glanced at Louis Yun and Louis Buhai, who were sobbing on the ground, frowning. Just now, a group of people took Yun's mother away. They said they were going to hear the sea cliff. Ren Xiling saw Wu Qiushui and said immediately. Wu Qiushui stamped his feet, saying bitterly, "Too late. Too late. These bastards. How dare they? Let's go to hear the sea cliff right now." "Wait a minute, Secretary Wu. Do you know what those villagers want to do?" Ren Xiling frowned and asked. Wu Qiushui moved his lips, saying at last, "You're tourists. It's Louis Village's business and my responsibility. Don't worry about it." He hurriedly ordered Little Du, "You go and find a few more young people. Let's go to hear the sea cliff right now." Seeing Wu Qiushui leave in a hurry, Ren Xiling muttered to herself, "These old bastards, don't tell me they want to use living people to worship the god of the sea like they did in the past." She suddenly shivered. If that was the case, it would be too frightening. However, looking at the grandfather and grandson who were hugging each other without anyone to rely on, one in a daze and the other in a panic, Ren Xiling couldn't say these words. She walked to Louis Yun, squatting down and comforting her. "Secretary Wu seems reliable. Your mother may not be in danger." The little girl had to nod blankly. Ren Xiling asked again, "Oh, the old man said the landlady is not your biological mother. What's the matter?